being a leftist to grant them oppressed status so they can center themselves in other people's struggles and cosplay as oppressed.
Yes, yes. You're really good at taking some fairly difficult to parse, like things that get messy or dust up kind of stuff, and you can describe it afterwards in a way that's very easy to understand, and you break it down in ways where I'm just like, oh yeah, no, this is good. This is my favorite part of the video. It's a shame it's at the end. You should have like put this at the start, but it has spoiled the surprise, I know.
Refusing to acknowledge just caring about your comrades, the people in the space with you, the greater audience watching, and the history of what it means to be called a slave as a black man, the history of where the term Zog comes from. You could easily just came on stream and said, you know what? Probably shouldn't have said that. Real talk. That was probably a distraction.
Right.
And then we could have been on to things that are way more meaningful.
Right.
But you've dug your heels in for your right to use offensive language. You are Vosh. You are the new Vosh. It's so fucking funny how full circle this.
Oh God, this is great. Thank you. Thank you for making this. This is lovely. I would have to say, yeah, FD Signifier didn't agree to be a part of this. At first I thought, why is this going on? Why are they having this conversation? And honestly, you know, like when I was talking with, yeah, it's not a good look. Well, I mean, frankly, it wasn't. But when I learned more about it, I realized that, yeah, you know, fair play. He found himself in a situation that he didn't want to be in. But watching him handle himself against Bad Empanada, he did a really good job, because this is all unscripted, and you know, and his arguments and what he's doing, he handled himself well, and I agree with a lot of what he said. Leading the stuff that led up to this, and is he going to blow the whistle? Is he going to not? Well, the reality is that I think having a big channel is important in blowing the whistle, but you also have to pick your battles. He has a lot of other stuff going on, and I have criticized him about some things where I don't think you can really talk your way out of it. Like, oh, your coworker's a liberal Zionist, Abigail Thorne. You know, it's like, so my biggest point of criticism with FD Signifier, you know, I made that known. Whereas this kind of thing, it's more, you know, call him a Nazi or hang him with his own rope the way that FD Signifier did. Potato. You know, the result is similar, I think, because after this, he's going to fuck off and be like, whatever, I don't want to have anything to do with you ever again. Okay, that's fair. I would be a little bit more stabby myself, but that's just my style. And at that point, you know, one person, it's styles make fights. I would not be very much fun to watch. This is definitely more entertaining. I'll hand FD Signifier that. And I also agree with a lot of their arguments when push comes to shove. Hi everyone. Today I am going to be reacting to a video, specifically one by FD Signifier that he shared on FD Streams. I debated the worst white leftist in the world. He shared this 5 hours ago. And I had already heard that he was going to be debating Bad Empanada and Noah Samson, who does good work themselves in regards to Palestinian rights, is someone who likes to have different voices on regarding Palestinian rights. And Bad Empanada, warts and all, is someone who does discuss quite extensively Palestinian rights. The problem, and that's something that FD Signifier will probably get into, is that Bad Empanada is, if memory serves, the id of BreadTube. Their attack dog is how he put it. And I think perhaps that might be giving him a little bit too much credit, as to imply that he is somehow in talks with someone like Natalie Wynn or Vosh, that old guard of BreadTube, and how they would want to have anything to do with him or not, or that they have an ongoing relationship. I don't know if it's really the best metaphor, but I understand what FD Signifier is saying. In any event, what we'll be doing predominantly is reacting to this video by FD Signifier, where they talk about their experiences debating Bad Empanada while Noah Samson is kind of giving them a platform. And whatever happens between Signifier and Bad Empanada while they're being moderated by Samson, it's important to remember that the money that is made here is predominantly going towards Palestinian people in Gaza and elsewhere during the occupation of their homeland and ongoing genocide. So the title kind of says it all. I debated the worst white leftists in the world for a fundraiser. That fundraiser is for a noble cause. Even if Bad Empanada is ultimately basically a Nazi with red paint. Hi everyone, this is Persephone from the future. I just want to say that this video, it wound up being really long because I wanted to go through the entire thing, and I thought, well, I want to respond to as much of it as I can, and maybe I'll edit out the parts where it's not, I'm not really talking, but I'd like to just leave it all in, and, there's going to be basically a large section after I give the initial context for everything where I just go through the entire video, I watch it, and I respond to it. And this is kind of a palate cleanser for me after I moved, and I'm just getting back into a routine, and I'm watching F.D. Signifier, someone who I respect and I enjoy the content that they make. I've criticized them mildly in the past, but nowhere near to the same extent as Bad Empanada. You'll see what I mean if you watch the video. I'll have timestamps where you can go and check that out. But also, I didn't want to put too much work into this just because I've written about Bad Empanada so much already, and this is more something that's fun for me to watch someone else who I enjoy style on him in a way that's actually really satisfactory. You've already seen the clips that I've included where I basically acknowledge some things that it takes a little while for F.D. Signifier. They plant this trap, and then they deliver it and spring it on Bad Empanada at the end, and then they just shut the conversation down and are like, I'm done. It's done really well, but I'm kind of like sort of tapping my foot up until then, but giving credit where credit is due. And I wanted to give all of the context and information up front. I lead off with a couple of things that I really appreciate about F.D. Signifier, and I have to explain a lot of things before we get to watching the video. And F.D. Signifier does do some things that bothers me. Like, look, just call him a Nazi. If he's acting like a Nazi, he's a Nazi, ipso facto, by virtue of action. So there are some criticisms that I have of F.D. Signifier's approach, but at the end, I feel like it pays off. And his approach pays off, that is. And I really appreciate this. And for the record, he did not want to have a conversation with Bad Empanada. And he found himself being like, well, Bad Empanada's here. All right. Well, I didn't want to do this, but we're going there. And I have, some thoughts and feelings about that I can unpack. But the way that he ultimately does it is very well done. And because ultimately, me and my friends were kind of confused. Why is he having a conversation with this guy? Well, it turns out that it was sprung on him. It was something that he didn't really want to do. But then he's like, I'm going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And he does a really good job. So that's kind of the gist in this video. The two of them are debating. I'm familiar with all three. I've critiqued Bad Empanada extensively, and to a lesser extent, I've critiqued F.D. Signifier. Noah Samson, to my knowledge, hasn't really been doing anything except for platforming people to raise money and awareness regarding the Palestinian struggle. So as far as I'm concerned, they can, at the moment, do no wrong themselves. But that is, of course, perhaps not true, but nobody's beyond reproach. But Noah Samson really has done exceptional work. And F.D. Signifier, I'm a huge fan of the work that they do for the most part. And even Bad Empanada, despite the fact that they are effectively a broken clock, do have, as that saying would imply, several moments twice a day where they are not wrong, specifically about the Palestinian struggle. But then they go and pollute the discourse and completely corrupt the struggle by throwing a wide variety of minorities under the bus. So, before we start watching the video, I wanted to sort of talk very briefly about the work that I've done on Bad Empanada and, to a lesser extent, F.D. Signifier. I'm an academic critic, sex worker, activist, artist, what have you, and the work that I do goes towards raising intersectional consciousness, solidarity, teamwork, and awareness, essentially. So all of this is done to provide extra perspective on a situation that could very easily turn into a team-based sport. Is it Team Signifier or is it Team Empanada? And for the record, I would go on the side of Signifier more than likely, but even so, I don't like to divide things just very neatly black and white, pardon the expression, but I like to find the gray area and the nuance. It's my profession. I specialize in literary analysis, but there's also a socio-political component, a dialectical material critique that extends into BIPOC voices, liberation, alongside trans people, and other minorities that Bad Empanada most of the time tends to attack. I wrote an essay regarding them, which boiled down to slurs aren't activism. And if you are saying that people such as myself, disabled people, what have you, are useless eaters, that's not activism. Because if you sacrifice someone to save someone else, what do you think the Israelis are doing? So I have a lot more shade to throw Bad Empanada's way than I do Signifier's. Signifier, for the most part, is okay. But I do want to explain each case just a little bit more before we get started. So first and foremost, it's pretty simple just to sort of follow along. About a day ago, I explained I critiqued F.D. Signifier for his liberal Zionism, defending Abigail Thorne, and Bad Empanada for his own Nazi-grade bullshit, calling trans, disabled, plural folk, and other useless eaters. Bad Empanada is basically Norm Finkelstein without the pedigree, and F.D. thinks you can't hold people accountable, in his own words. Both are strange and hardly above critique, but also not unable to get certain things right. But BE's still a weird incel. And then I say here, to Noah Sampson and F.D. Signifier, I recently saw your discussion with Bad Empanada and wanted to remind you, BE is fash when it comes to different minorities, including trans folk, indigenous peoples, the disabled, sex workers, plural persons, and furries. Kindly refer to my dossier on him, Raising Awareness, which I made entirely safe for work on my old blog for your convenience, which has visual aids that aren't cropped by YouTube. And I'm referring specifically to this video, though I think it was actually from the Noah Sampson version of the same section, essentially. And I'm recommending that they examine Raising Awareness, the safer work version. For a while, I had this age-gated on my website and my blog, but I decided, well, if I'm going to have the uncensored version of this on my website, I should probably make this one safer work. And it was age-gated, but it had fig leaf exhibits and things like that. But long story short, this post goes over a variety of cases where Bad Empanada is being a Nazi. Blue sky is where you go when you have 15 self-diagnosed mental illnesses and want to be in an echo chamber with other people who also have 15 self-diagnosed mental illnesses. Bad Empanada, I say. You might as well call my friends and I useless eaters at this point. Of course, I legitimately think you should be in the mines. They say, after that, to me, you are a dangerous sex pest, so it's ultimately great for everyone else that you are unemployed and just sit at home all day writing embarrassing blog posts interspersed with porn of yourself for no reason that no one reads, keeps you away from sexually assaulting people. So they're calling me a rape survivor, granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor and resistance fighter, and someone who fights for the rights of various minorities who suffer from being homeless, who as sex workers are discriminated against, and a wide variety of minorities within that, unpaid labor, BIPOC or otherwise. And speaking of which, if we go here, where I'm basically raising awareness in regards to what I'm discussing, I also connect that to an older post about Bad Empanada being a Nazi, where I compare Bad Empanada to the Young Republicans' racist chat, where these American politicians in the American House of Representatives, if memory serves, were saying things that were really no different than what Bad Empanada was saying. Go to town, Donald, making fun of furries, plural people, calling us useless eaters, saying that we should bring back slave labor in regards to me when I critiqued Bad Empanada for going rightfully after Natalie Wynn, aka ContraPoints, for being a liberal Zionist, but then using terms like identity narcissism, which is a dog whistle. It's calling someone hysterical, it's sexist, it's transmisogynist, it's ableist. So for me pointing that out, Bad Empanada thinks that I should be locked up while they're saying go to town, Donald, and basically doing the same exact shit that white, straight homophobes do in the American government. So you have a white Aussie expat who's acting puritanical in a fascist way. That counteracts any kind of activism that Bad Empanada might do. So I was raising awareness for F.D. Signifier and Noah Sampson, saying, look, I've researched this guy extensively, and I reach out to them on here, and I give them some places to go, but I also do it on here. I've worked with over 100 sex workers at this point from all walks, usually under 40, and of different races, cis, not cis, a couple of cis sex workers, especially earlier on, but then I got more involved with queer people of color. And this is an ongoing issue where I try and address fascism as a rising problem by not being fascist myself, which is something that Bad Empanada isn't able to do. He thinks, well, if I just pick one really atrocious struggle to fight for and basically make myself appear superior in a white savior kind of way, I can be flagrantly bigoted in other ways, and that somehow won't balance out or tip the scales in a fascist direction. It's obscurantism. It's him playing the victim. And if you want to know more about that, you need only read the rest of this. And this specific version is safe for work. I removed all of the exhibits that would require me to age gate it. But these opening images here, and then further down here, and then there's a couple others up front. If you don't want to read the entirety of it, because the entirety doesn't focus on Bad Empanada, that's fine. Just read the first few images. He was saying shit almost a year ago now. I mean, he crashed out in September 2025, if memory serves, and people are still platforming him on YouTube. Surprise, surprise, he's conservative. And there are a lot of Marxist-Leninists who platform him as well. I don't have time to get into that, but In this instance, it seems like the debate between him and F.D. Signifier is getting pretty spicy in ways where Fairy Queen Rickspin was skeptical of F.D. Signifier, and honestly I was too. I said it doesn't feel like a good look, but that remains to be seen. Maybe they just give it to Bad Empanada straight. I've heard them talk about him before, incidentally. If we go to Concerning Venezuela, F.D. Signifier had some words to say that actually jived with me. I was like, yeah, fucking oath. F.D. Signifier is someone that I want to expose. I don't plan to expand this essay much, but have added some quality of life changes, e.g. extra definitions, visual aids, footnotes, and a postscript explaining some of my ideas vis-a-vis the usual pimps in disguise, e.g. Bad Empanada, or also those who continue to defend him despite his incel behavior when praising Trump's behaviors. Go to town, Donald. As the usual chickens come home to roost, refer to slurs on activism and the chickens come home to roost, transphobe Bad Empanada goes mask off. For a quick and dirty look into why Bad Empanada is fash, read Raising Awareness for the whole dossier on him and further citations. P.S. If you want another minority to critique Bad Empanada besides my white trans ass, consider what F.D. Signifier has to say about him above. If Bad Empanada had a PhD and wrote some books, he'd be Norm Finkelstein. Norm Finkelstein is a professional edgelord, white liberal, F.D. Signifier says in Problematic White Guy Tier List 2026. To which I say, yeah. F.D. continues, at the end of the day, Bad Empanada says a lot of shit, and I'm like, yeah, but he's so spicy, up his own debate bro ass, that every third time he talks, he's going to say something like, what are you talking about? Verily. So, this is me basically handing it to F.D. Signifier, who has spoken out about Palestinian rights before, alongside the rights of minorities on the American side of things. Here's where it gets a little bit messy. One problem I have, or point of criticism that I could raise about F.D. Signifier, and before I raise it, I do want to say that F.D. Signifier is someone whose work I generally, respect. They still have done some things that do merit critique, but the critique that they're meriting is relatively small. Just because this post by me critiquing them, sharing the blame, or the mild tokenism of F.D. Signifier and Foreign Man in a Foreign Land when defending Philosophy Tube, re liberal Zionism and state vampirism, this is a fairly lengthy piece, but in this specific instance, the number of times that I mention F.D. Signifier and focus on them versus how much I focus on Bad Empanada and what he's doing, it's a relatively small point of critique, and even though I extrapolate on the theory behind it, the number of times that I focus on F.D. Signifier and what they're doing specifically is relatively small. This two-part essay, Sharing the Blame, addresses F.D. Signifier and Foreign Man in a Foreign Land's mild tokenism, i.e. as paid labor, non-care, non-sex workers. Specifically, they're defending Philosophy Tube, aka Abigail Thorne's liberal Zionism, to a moderate degree. Two straight black men defending a white trans woman, selling out mid-genocide, and her defending them. In doing so, both parties perform state vampirism, feeding, dressed up as progressive, a shared betrayal harming unpaid labor while refusing to share blame. And the reason I mention that is because F.D. Signifier is someone who says repeatedly, time and time again, that you can't hold people accountable. In his mind, you can only comment on them. You can only critique them. And I'm sorry, but as far as I'm concerned, accountability and criticism go hand in hand. And I know that F.D. Signifier knows that because despite the fact that they spend a large amount of time streaming, they also basically could have a PhD if they wanted. They would have to finish the written portion of it, but they have put in a lot of field work. They have done all of the pedagogical aspects of getting a PhD, apart from writing the PhD itself. In my case, my PhD was something that I wrote independently and released as a book, but I have my master's, I have my bachelor's before that, and after that, through my postgrad work more broadly, I have worked with over 100 sex workers. And it is something where I can understand where FD Signifier is coming from. So when they say, you can't hold people accountable, you can only comment on it. I'm sorry, but as an academic, speaking to another academic, to you, FD Signifier, don't you know that commentary is a form of accountability? Like, I think what you're talking about is a juridical process with material consequences that are enforced by someone other than the state. And if that's what you mean by that, then okay, fine. We're not a lynch mob, we're not vigilantes, and we're not a union or some kind of larger group that ipso facto is going to hold people like Bad Empanada accountable. And yet, I would like to think that there is going to be some transition from capital and capitalism to socialism and ultimately communism, where we do have to start holding people accountable. And not just the bourgeoisie, but bougie people such as yourself, such as Bad Empanada, Foreign Man in a Foreign Land, and Abigail Thorne. You're not above reproach. And that's essentially what I'll be doing here. But the degree to which I am critiquing FD Signifier versus Bad Empanada, I'm definitely coming into this one biased because Bad Empanada is a giant SWERF and is racist and is transphobic and a wide variety of things. They're basically someone who left Australia because it got too hot there politically for them, and they went to Argentina and started acting like a Nazi. Whereas FD Signifier, I've only really written about them once. Where Bad Empanada, I've written about them extensively, time and time again. And there's just not as much to say about FD Signifier as far as them being problematic. Though I do mention with FD Signifier that they have a tendency to not just keep quiet sometimes, but, I don't know enough, I can't talk about this topic. Okay, that's fine, but maybe get informed. And keeping that in mind, there is a point where they say, researching for a video that discusses sex work. I think I pretty understand what a SWERF is, but is there an actual good faith explanation to be anti-sex work as a leftist? Please don't start a fight in my mentions, I'm trying to see something. And I say, to FD Signifier, no, FD, there isn't. Any more than there's a good explanation for TERFs to exist and call them leftists. From MLs to second-wave feminists, anti-sex work targets the exploitation of women under criminogenic conditions where the whore is blamed for the pimp. Also, SWERFs and challenging anti-sex work is a huge part of my own research and activism. RE versus Marxist-Leninism and its own whorephobia, sexism and queerphobia, the kind exhibited by people like Bad Empanada. I'd be curious to see your video when it releases, but also to know its premise. Hook a girl up? So FD Signifier kind of strikes me, grumpy dad energy. They're around my age. I'm turning 40 in a week or so, and they strike me as someone who's of a similar age, same generation, same part of that generation. We're both bougie, and I'm trans. That's how I'm a minority, first and foremost. Neurodivergent. A lot of the people I work with are neurodivergent, trans, regardless of their ethnicity. But one of my partners is Mali Irish. Another is intersex, from New Zealand specifically, and I also work with a wide variety of people, as I've said. Whereas FD Signifier, I believe they've mentioned, apart from being black, they're neurodivergent themselves. So we're coming at this from different degrees of privilege and oppression. And I can respect what they're doing, where they're trying to raise awareness, but also learn more about sex work themselves. So even though I could, basically get a little gruff with them as I do here, and here where I say, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to debate Bad Empanada, though I understand you give him the rope to hang himself with, hoist him on his own petard. But he's already done that, so why do you gotta debate the guy? And if you can raise more money, but then you're also at the same time giving him a platform. And I think it's entirely possible just to have F.D. Signifier on, and there are all these examples. Hey, what if you had this giant dossier, F.D. Signifier, that has all this shit about Bad Empanada and how much he sucks? Gee, I wonder if anyone's done something like that. And to be fair, this hasn't been safe for work for that long, but you can still go through it. Just take the images. You can just download this image. And my point being is that even beyond what I've done, there is a lot of stuff that Bad Empanada has done for years now. He was being sus in 2024 at the very least, where he was basically dog whistling to people in his community on his second channel, saying that people who talk about sex like it's their main interest must be dealt with, make it taboo again. Specifically, this image here, people who talk about sex constantly and openly like it's their main interest must be dealt with, make it taboo again. This was in 2024. And as I said here, approaching him in good faith, mind you, because at this point I still consumed more of his content, mainly his essays. Like his essay about Manifest Destiny is frankly fine. As a sex worker, activist, and BDSM doctor, I'm not sure how to feel here. BDSM doctor, that's not a fucking thing. And then I go on to say I'm an independent researcher, but wrote my postgraduate work on the Gothic ludology, Marxism, and BDSM. I have multiple books out about sex positivity and BDSM. So Bad Empanada has known about me. Bad Empanada has harassed me. Bad Empanada has accused me of being a rapist. Bad Empanada has accused me of stalking him. So if you want to know more about all of that, you can simply read this. So Bad Empanada is a bad actor. And if you're having a friendly debate, or even something that's remotely polite regarding Bad Empanada, that I would argue is ultimately a mistake. It would be like debating a Nazi. And Nazis and people who act like Nazis are not really people we should be platforming. You can talk about them without giving them a voice. Bad Empanada should not have a voice. You don't have to debate him to make him look bad. All right, real quick here before we get started. I did comment on this video, basically giving this a watch. I haven't had time until now because of moving and waiting to get a new cord for my microphone, which I got. But it's nice to hear you speak candidly about Bad Empanada in ways that are frank, upfront, and easy for me, someone who's written about and investigated BE's bullshit for years, to agree with. I'll respond to this once my cord arrives, and I'm not forced to talk through a tin can, if I can read. Luckily, I won't have to do much reading, because now we're just going to be watching this video. So, without further ado, let's get started.
This unique looking figure to my right on the screen is Bad Empanada. Bad Empanada is a C-tier, bread tube online left creator on YouTube. Maybe he's B-tier now. How many subscribers does he have? He's got 208 subscribers. I think that
I would argue, what is the value of a YouTuber? And it seems like F.D. Signifier's way of qualifying that is basically monetary. How many subscribers do you have? But if that were the case, is he saying that the ultimate S-rank YouTuber video essayist is Mr. Beast? If you have that, I don't really like that metric. I know what he's doing, and he's basically, but that kind of thing can very easily come off as means testing, gatekeepy. It's a dick measuring thing. I know why he's doing it, but there's this tendency for FD signifiers sometimes to count beans, basically, and it's not really that important in terms of someone's argument. How many subscribers do you have? All right, well, I have 1,000, but I'd like to think that the work that I do is important, and I would prefer to focus on the kind of rubric that actually qualifies someone's work in a meaningful way, not just what's their reach.
That's good enough to get you to B tier. He is technically a video essayist, but if you look at his channel, as you can see, there's
his second channel.
A lot of other people's faces on his thumbnail.
Okay, so he showed his second channel, and now this is his first channel.
Like, it's not the typical video essayist channel. At a certain point, he pivoted very hard into responding to other people's stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He really stopped doing his video essays probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. Maybe a little bit sooner than that, but his Manifest Destiny essay was back in 2021, I think, during COVID. So the Bad Empanada that I remember that I actually respected is long gone. And he's replaced himself with a grifter who wears a mask and basically Hannibal Lecter. You know, he's like, trust me, guys, I'm totally a leftist. But then he does all this really fucked up stuff. And FD Signifier is 100% correct when he says a lot of this is reacting to other people, responding to them. And yeah, there are reasons for that, but in terms of money, but it does affect the work that he does. He has since stopped being a video essayist in the way that most people on YouTube might think of it, and he is not an essayist outside of YouTube in any shape or form.
Because the fact of the matter is, he learned pretty early, and he'll admit this, he missed this during this conversation. The things he's most interested in talking about, the things that he wanted to bring to the table to LeftTube or BreadTube, were not things that the general audience was interested in. And so he could not build an audience doing that.
When you say general audience, straight white people, I mean, I'm not entirely sure what FD Signifier means beyond, if I had to extrapolate on that, I would assume just the general viewership for Bad Empanada. Bad Empanada has a reactionary fan base of people in America, but also I've had people come after me based on what he said and make accusations about me, who I got the feeling weren't Americans, but also weren't from Europe. They sounded like they might be from the Middle East, Muslim. And again, if someone wants to critique me and they're Muslim, that's fine. But the point being is that he has a reactionary fan base of people who aren't American, aren't European, and aren't Christian or atheist for that matter. So I would like to ask FD Signifier, well, what do you mean by general audience? Because what is Bad Empanada's general audience? It's not just white straight guys. There's some other stuff going on there for sure.
At a certain point, he becomes, I think I described him once as the online left's attack dog, BreadTube's id. And that has been my opinion on Bad Empanada for a long time.
How long? I mean, how long have you felt this way?
Bad Empanada is a person who is capable of making useful content when he wants to, but is also capable of being an antisocial, edgelord, weirdo, troglodyte.
Yes.
That nobody should really be associating with.
Yeah, absolutely. He's toxic. And I say this as someone who reached out to him, you know, back before he really started grifting. And I asked him before he showed me his ass and said, you know, people who talk about sex like it's their main interest must be dealt with. Okay, Hitler. Okay, Stalin. You know, you're going to burn down the Institute of Sexology, Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute of Sexology. Are you going to sign into law that homosexuals should be thrown into jail? Like, so even before that, before he really showed me his ass, I remember reaching out to him and and saying, hey, I'd like to work together, never got back to me. But the moment he started really behaving in a more reactionary kind of way, he did nothing but attack me and basically say that, oh, I'm a sex pest. If I were around other people, I would rape them, ignoring the fact that I'm a rape survivor and granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor, and that I'm trans. I help other trans people, gender nonconforming people more broadly, regardless of their ethnicity, ignoring all of that and reducing me to someone to string up and attack, to shame mid-witch hunt during not just the Palestinian genocide, but also trans genocide. So yeah, FD Signifier is 100% correct.
That nobody should be associating with thing is important, because that's something that has been said privately by a lot of people on the online left for a long time.
And that really frustrates the ever-living shit out of me. Why has this been kept private for so long? I've written about Bad Empanada for years at this point, and it's only just coming out now that he's a douchebag. People like Second Thought, Hakeem Ugopnik, who platform him, interview him, and talk about him in ways where they're not able to be nearly as candid as FD streams, FD Signifier. But it pisses me off because FD Signifier isn't putting this on his main channel, and other people as well have basically kept quiet about Bad Empanada because he's a white straight guy, I presume. He's a white guy with a beard. And that is part of the problem. And FD Signifier is part of that, because if Bad Empanada is such a large problem, why relegate it to just talking about it in a very sparse kind of way? If he's really such an issue within the leftist sphere on YouTube, shouldn't it be brought up a bit more?
Even when we agree with him. And this is specifically something that I did say on numerous occasions to Noah Sampson. I'm not gonna share Discord messages or whatever, but there have been a few times where Noah's like, what about Bad Empanada? And I basically said, I get why there's an appreciation for Bad Empanada, but this dude is unhinged and unprincipled and undisciplined.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is only going to cause problems for people the more attention he gets, because what he cares about more than anything is attention and clout.
So why have him on then?
To be fair, it's not even just attention and clout, it's also being the edgiest boy. I think that's really what led to, in part, to his conflict with Vosh and Destiny, because they all fundamentally have similar behavior, just different politics.
I would argue too that the behavior of Vosh and Destiny is they are sexual abusers. Vosh is someone who has abused multiple women and other people as well, from what I understand. I can't even say allegedly, because as far as I understand it at this point, it's a matter of case law, isn't it? He has ongoing lawsuits against him that are unfolding right now. So at the very least, as far as I understand, Destiny has abused, or sorry, did I say Vosh is someone who has come out and said, look, I abused people, and he basically got out in front of it and said, I did this, I'm so sorry, now that I've been caught. And Destiny is one that, as far as I understand it, has pending litigation. So again, as an educator, as someone who researches this kind of stuff, I've written about Vosh. Destiny, not quite so much, though I've heard about him, just because some of his abuses came to light after I had basically written my book sections about men like Vosh and Destiny. But I remember covering Ian Kuczynski and talking about him and his numerous abuses. Those men abuse other people sexually, whereas, as far as I understand it, Bad Empanada abuses people regarding their sexuality and their gender in a very puritanical witch hunter kind of way. I wasn't kidding when I called him an incel. He's a SWERF, he's a TERF, and he's an incel. He doesn't have sex with other people, and the behaviors are ultimately reactionary, but there is a difference there in how they approach it. One is a giant prude, and the others are anything but prudes. So it's just a distinction that I think it is important to make. If you're studying sexual abuse, Bad Empanada is someone who basically blames whores and punches down at trans people and sex workers more broadly, whereas the other two, in my opinion, are people who are abusive towards people in a very direct sexual kind of way. Like, they have actually doxed people, from what I understand. Again, don't allegedly, whatever. But to my knowledge, they have done some pretty serious harm on a one-to-one basis with people, like, in person. And they have preyed upon people in a sexual way. Whereas Bad Empanada, there's an inversion there. So just something to keep in mind.
Because I am not the first person to say this or experience this around him. He's been transphobic in the past. He's been anti-indigenous in the past. He's been racist to Mexicans in the past. So I don't even remember the context of this, to be honest. Black Red Guard, for whatever reason, got into it Bad Empanada a while ago, and then Bad Empanada, because this is just how he behaves, has become a reply guy to Black Red Guard on Twitter. Black Red Guard says something that I think is completely logical. Can we please stop trying to use anti-Semitic slurs wokely? It's not cute or funny.
Yes, as I've said myself, slurs aren't activism. If you have a minority that reclaims a slur themselves, like the N-word or the F slur, something like that, that's one thing. But if you don't belong to an oppressed group and you're saying, don't worry guys, I'm reclaiming it for you, you're just being a bigot, which isn't activism.
Bad Empanada's response is, look at this pathetic, obedient little Zog slave. He kneels before his masters and begs for scraps. I'm going to get into all the problems with this statement more when we actually get to the debate part. But seeing this, it's like, okay, I start to recognize there is a willful desire, and this is something I've known forever, because this is, again, what debate bros have kind of always been. The desire to be edgy and
to be correct, too, to be correct through force.
Be free to behave in certain ways. Leftists of this ilk will use whatever the issue du jour is to get away with that behavior.
There's a bureaucratic angle, something that you can see in older reactionaries would say, we're revolutionaries, but we're going to posture as strong. Stalin, man of steel. Hitler, National Socialists, the leader, the man of steel, the strong man. And they would sort of prop themselves up in ways where they consolidate power in a very top-down kind of format that lets them do, frankly, a lot of really bigoted stuff. If you make people illegal or otherwise punch down at them for being degenerate or a useless eater, something equivalent to that in function, linguistically speaking, and then you execute that ipso facto, that is just the same old kind of oppression that we want to fight.
So after noticing that, I'm like, I don't know if this is like the person that people should be leaning on to have that discussion. Zog is literally a Nazi term. Zog is a term that is born from the Turner Diary.
Yeah, yes. Bad Empanada is a fucking Nazi. If you're using Nazi words unironically, congratulations, you're a Nazi. And I'm like, yes, thank you, F.D. You know, it's like, I know I've critiqued you before, and I like to think relatively fairly, but you're fucking spitting bars right now. Bad Empanada is a Nazi.
So the term Zog means Zionist occupied government, and it literally comes from the Turner Diaries. The Turner Diaries is the neo-Nazi Bible. What you see here with Bad Empanada is him literally just using neo-Nazi terminology against a black person. Just unironically, that is what, and literally the use of that term, Zog slave, is explicitly tied to black people as these anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories tend to imply. The reason why neo-Nazis hate the Jews is because the Jews utilized black people and other people of color to dilute the white race, prop us up into positions of power to create white genocide.
I would also argue that in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, there were black people living in Germany who were basically cut off from the colonial territories that they came from after the Treaty of Versailles and the losing of all of these lands and these territorial gains. Germany, the Weimar Republic, as it became Nazi Germany, basically started incorporating all of these different minorities, including people of color, including disabled people, queer people, what have you, until they were no longer useful. And people of color would have been exploited alongside Jewish people, just as gay people were forced to wear a pink triangle on their arm. So yeah, it's the kind of thing where these types of modularities, ways of punching down, intersect. And that happened back then, and it happens now.
This short, and I talked about this with Noah directly, this short is labeled, in quotes, Zionist is a dog whistle, in quotes. And then he titles it, F.D. Signifier calls Zionist a Nazi dog whistle. So there's no other thing to understand about what he's trying to say here than I specifically said, literally, because that's what quotes are used for in the English language, and he is an English speaker primarily, that I said Zionist is a Nazi dog whistle. I want you to hear what I actually said. As they've materialized for content and for clout, that has been alarming, and it's been something I personally stayed away from, in part because as Bill saw, like there's so many people waiting in the weeds to label you a Zionist and a Jewish supremacist and a insert Nazi dog whistle here for just being like, this sounds weird. Y'all are sounding a little weird. But that also doesn't mean that there's not a better version of an analysis that I could be operating with, or that could be put out in the forefront, which is, I think, what I'm most hopeful to get at. So I'm barely coherent in this clip.
Yeah, there's not really much of a thesis there. It's just like, look, I am hesitant to use language of a particular type because you can get labeled as something you're not. Like that's understandable. You want to use the language carefully. That's just the mark of a good academic.
Out of context, this clip makes no sense. But understand, at no point in this clip do you hear me say Zionist is a Nazi dog whistle.
Yeah, it's a straw man. It's a straw man that was put into your mouth by Bad Empanada.
As they materialize for content and for clout. That has been alarming. It has been alarming. That has been alarming. And it's been something I personally stayed away from, in part because as Bill saw, like there's so many people waiting in the weeds There's so many people waiting in the weeds. And in this situation, the irony is I'm referring to Bad Empanada. Like, label you a Zionist and a Jewish supremacist and a insert Nazi dog whistle here for just being like, this sounds weird. Y'all are sounding a little weird. That's referring to this. Anybody that says to Bad Empanada and his fans, hey, I think it's weird that you all are using genuine dog whistles, terms created by neo-Nazis to spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, which he, as he shows himself, understands are not good. I think it's weird that you would do that.
Yeah, it's boundaries for me, not for thee, but also fascists, Darvo, and obscurantism. You steal language and you use it to obscure what you're doing, and the language that you're stealing presents you as a victim that, oh, I'm not the abuser, you're the abuser, and you accuse other people of something that you're doing yourself. Nazis love to do that. And it's the kind of thing that you often see manifest in ways that people might not even recognize, because Darrow is such a common abuse tactic that you see it among domestic abusers, you see it among political bad actors, and those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
I think it's weird that that's happening. But you know what? I'm not even gonna jump in there with y'all, because once I start saying that, you're going to just call me a Zionist.
Yeah, it turns into a game where they just point the finger at you. If you try and call them out, then it leads to this very unproductive kind of game. And they do that on purpose. They want to tire you out. They'll bait you, and they'll basically demonstrate that they're acting in bad faith to try and tire you out. But unfortunately, to some extent, all you have to do is do what you're doing now. It takes work, but if you ignore them and you don't do anything about them at all, then look, Bad Empanada's power has grown. He's the shadow in the east, to borrow from Tolkien, and Tolkien's an imperfect author, but the point being is that the evil necromancer in the forest, in this case, the Hawthornian devil worshipper, wasn't someone from the outside. It was the people in the village. The call is coming from inside the house. And to protect our communities, you have to actively police bad actors. You can't just ignore them. You actually have to say something.
Or and insert Nazi dog whistle here. The Nazi dog whistle in question is Zog slave. It's weird to me that leftists who are anti-Zionist and pro-Palestine would adopt language and terminology from neo-Nazis.
Just call him a bad actor. That's what he is. Or just, better yet, call him a Nazi. If he's using that language like a Nazi would, that makes him a Nazi, ipso facto.
To employ them to be anti-Zionist and pro-Palestinian. I don't think that's useful. I don't think that's useful at all. I think that's counterproductive on multiple levels. And I also just think it's weird and disrespectful and racist.
Yeah, it is. Almost like he's a Nazi.
There's a clear incentive for him to constantly do content like this.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing, it's a grift. And you have to remember that fascism was unto itself a kind of grift. It was a con, and it was something that rewarded people and gave them a material incentive for being bigoted.
And that's who he's shaped himself as in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
Like, he wasn't getting traction at all until he started beefing with Vosh and Destiny. And that kind of created his persona. And he's leaned into that persona, as I said at the beginning of the video, pretty much this entire time.
Not only that, he's kind of become like them. It's very Friedrich Nietzsche, right? When fighting monsters, make sure you don't become a monster yourself. The codicil that I would add being that language is dualistic. So I'm a monster because I'm a trans woman. Whether I want to be or not, you're a black man. People are going to demonize you regardless if you want them to or not. Trans, gender minorities, racial minorities, minorities of culture and class. These things often force us to reclaim our own oppression and use it against the colonizer. The thing with Bad Empanada is he's not oppressed. He's a white straight man. And he's using this language and saying, oh, well, don't worry. I'm not being racist because I'm using it ironically. But there's no irony because he's a bad actor and he knows it. And sooner or later, you just have to expose someone for that. Maybe not as thoroughly as I have. You could just make a 5-minute video on your main channel saying, look at this fucking asshole. He's a fucking dick. He's a Nazi. And just leave it at that, I'm not the best at that kind of thing because I'm neurodivergent and I have hyperfocus. And I know that F.D. Signifier has to understand his own boundaries and what he's comfortable with. And he's already dealing with a lot. And he is an activist himself. You have to pick your battles. But it seems like push comes to shove. And now he's starting to talk about this a bit more publicly, which is better late than never.
To be just blunt, Bad Empanada and this specific type of debate bro style creator, they work for a specific type of leftist figure online. It's not just the left. It's really all of these reactionary types where these are fundamentally weak individuals, fundamentally weak people that get joy out of someone they perceive as strong dominating another person. They like the idea that they are fans of the big strong man.
Yeah, it's a core facet of fascism. Strong man, force of will, follow the leader. They want to watch someone and follow someone to greatness by punching down against some kind of scapegoat, someone to blame, someone to fetishize. Through the abjection process, Julia Kristeva, it's pimp behavior. It's some kind of whore to blame, whether it's a Jewish person, a queer person, a person of color, BIPOC people, more broadly, disabled people. There are people who are conditioned like that since birth to antagonize by proxy through a strongman. That's how fascism works.
The person that wins fights and debates. It's very much wrestling. Going back to...
Yeah, and wrestling is something that isn't exclusive to fascism, mind you. Zangief, Street Fighter, not the best example because it's corporate and it's Cold War prestige, but at the end of the day, it's something to remember that, yeah, this is very much kayfabe. Absolutely.
This like thing creators like Bad Empanada are doing with the genocide in Palestine, they are using it as a get out of canceled free card to just punch left.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, there's criticisms to be made around ContraPoints, various other creators.
Abigail Thorne, who imitates ContraPoints, the person that you promote constantly in your own work, that you work alongside your coworkers, Nebula.
And how they've engaged in two-sided the genocide that I agree with. There's a necessary critique that I kind of wish I will just hold this L. I realized this is the beginning of the year when I started arguing with y'all, not y'all in particular, but when I started arguing with my chat about how Candace Owens has a point and you have to hand it to Candace Owens, I realized, oh shit, we failed. We failed to normalize and frontline a disciplined critique on the issue.
It's almost like you need to hold people accountable, huh?
And not just we, obviously the Democratic Party is the main culprit. Like, I want to be clear on that. But I was like, oh shit, we didn't do our jobs. If
you didn't, what's your job? Is your job to make money and brag about it? Or is it to hold people accountable?
This is something I'm seeing, and I was also seeing that in real life. Bad Empanada has a history degree. I don't think his history degree is in American studies. I'm pretty sure it's world studies. I'm sure he knows something about American history. I'm sure he has a better grasp than the average person.
Well, yeah, watch his video on Manifest Destiny. It's pretty good.
But he doesn't really understand white supremacy and racism. He doesn't. He thinks he does. He thinks his analysis is actually really good.
While being racist. And you're not wrong. He's very self-righteous about that. But he is also someone who thinks that he's so correct that he won't even have it. He wouldn't even look at me and have a conversation with me except to say that I was wrong and he was right, but also that he was the little victim and, oh, look at me, I'm so scary.
It's not. And so here's an example. We were talking about the nature of becoming white in America for Jewish people, and we compared it to Irish people and what Irish people went through. And so,
yeah.
So he decides that no, Irish people were always white in America based on some things he's about to say.
One thing that people are always wrong about in the US, for example, is that like Italians and Irish, etc., were ever considered not white. That's not true. Not even remotely true. They were always considered to be white from the very beginning. So the way
that's not true. Like, it's just not. Like, they were treated as criminal. They were treated as outsiders. They were treated as immigrants that could be demonized. Were they demonized to the same extent as diasporic slaves or indigenous people on Turtle Island? No. But you have to keep in mind that where Irish people came from, they were starved to death through a man-made famine at genocide. And the Irish Catholics were butchered by the Protestants through fear, hunger as a weapon, and various other tactics that continued into the 20th and 21st centuries. And this was something that absolutely would have been seen in America. Just because, again, Bad Empanada is rape ranking, and he's also lying. about history in regards to Irish people.
And they did that. They created a legal category called white. This is the first time they did it. And they did that specifically because they wanted to include the Irish in a category and give them something to lose so that they no longer felt sympathies with the black people there.
It is true that white people, the idea of white and the creation of the middle class, Howard Zinn's A People's History of America, would have targeted indentured servants. And this would have included Irish people to an extent, like the idea that they wanted to divide and conquer by giving certain people more rights than other people that they would then assimilate and triangulate against a slave class. And it bears repeating that an indentured servant is not the same thing as a chattel slave or an indigenous person who's being genocided actively on a given landmass. But that still doesn't mean that the Irish were always treated as equal, or that they weren't demonized, and that they were always just magically white because they had to be given those things, and not everyone took the soup, as it were. A saying that's just as relevant in America as it is in Ireland.
And would no longer think about rebelling with them.
So the irony here is that he's completely correct, but he's using this information to undergird an incorrect conclusion. He's literally disproving himself through his own language.
Well, and what F.D. Signifier means is that, yeah, there was a form of divide and conquer that incentivized Irish people to punch down. That part, I agree with. It's like there is a bit of historical truth there, but what's the conclusion?
Because what he basically just said is what we said and what anybody that actually understands white supremacy in America would say. It's not that Irish people were not legally white, is that they did not truly belong to the class and property of whiteness until after essentially the civil rights movement, after the New Deal.
Yeah. Watch Our Americans Plastic Patties, where it's a video. I'll link it in the description. I'm blanking on the name right now. The Leftist Cooks, Our Americans Plastic Patties. And it talks about hybridophilia and forms of assimilation between Ireland and America. Like, that was a more recent development. And there was a form of classism and furthermore racism against Irish people. It wasn't identical to how chattel slaves were treated in America or elsewhere, but the sectarian conflict between the Irish Catholics and Protestants, English Protestants, was racial. They saw them as racially inferior because race is a social concept. It's a construct that's used to divide people, and that happened against Irish people. Even if they were handed the soup, it's not something that they always took.
Up until the New Deal, the Irish were treated as second-class citizens.
Yeah, absolutely, fucking oath. They weren't just automatically superior, and even then they were still treated as like, oh, it's Lucky Charms. Oh, it's Darby O'Gill. They were treated as a commodity. And again, soup. They became the soup. They were tokenized, and they would get spent accordingly.
They were treated not the same as black people, not as harshly as black people, but definitely not included among whiteness in any meaningful sense other than to exclude black people from the category along with them.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a ladder of preferential mistreatment within a prison gang kind of mentality where they were, if you do this, you'll be treated better, but you won't be one of the prison guards. You'll be an inmate who's a snitch, basically.
As he just said, the biggest lynching event in the history of America is a lynching of like 17 Italians in New Orleans. So yes, while the Irish were legally white in America for a long time under the category of whiteness in a legal sense, that's the same way that black people were legally allowed to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because it says it on paper doesn't mean that it actually played out that way.
Before the Civil Rights Bill. It's a completely brain dead framing of this concept. and it shows his limitations. When I have limited information and experience in the topic, I either don't say nothing or do a better job of learning.
Yeah, and I will say that about FD Signifier is sometimes I think they're a little bit too quiet. You know, it's like, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to invite people on. But I understand what you're saying. And, that, you know, it's something my partner said about you specifically. They're like, look, if you don't know something, then don't just speak aggressively about it like you're an authority. And they really appreciated that about you. That, you know, okay. But, you know, conversely, I'm like, it's 2026 and it took you 5 years to say this about Bad Empanada. Though, to be fair, I didn't really start critiquing them until 2024 because that's when they started really showing their ass. But, you know, it seems like better late than never. But in any event, just trying to give credit where credit is due. But I sometimes struggle with that because I'm neurodivergent. I'm an academic, and I'm not really one to hand out just compliments willy-nilly.
Bad Empanada, he's like, fuck it. The wildest moment from this response, though, is this right here.
Going to be the dominant hierarchical system in the US and in the Americans in general. Where did that come from? How did it evolve to get to where it is now? They wouldn't be able to tell you. They don't know these things. I know more about race relations in their own country than they do about their own country. And here they are trying to apply their own narrow little already misunderstanding of how things work in their own country to other countries.
It's very white savior.
Or it doesn't even apply at all.
So he said, as an Australian man living in Argentina, as a white Australian man living in Argentina, that he knows more about race relations in America than a ABD sociologist, a history major, I don't know, deculturation's full education, but a historian, a Mexican historian, another black historian.
I will say that deculturation is a bit of a Stalinist. There's someone that I've critiqued before, but they definitely, I mean that in an academic sense. So, like, it is possible to critique people like this, but Bad Empanada is doing it in, like, baby's first debate. They sound like a really enthusiastic and, frankly, ignorant and hateful undergrad. So just because these people, yourself included, but also deculturation, I'm not sure about these two, like, everyone merits critique. I merit critique. No one's really beyond reproach, but it doesn't mean that what Bad Empanada is saying is correct, because it's really not.
And a genuine black studies scholar, PhD, who teaches at an HBCU. Like straight up academics. But Bad Empanada knows more than us and is able to lecture us on these topics.
I would argue that even if someone wasn't an academic, imagine if it was someone who was just, you know, came in off the street and they were maybe just working class, or they, regardless of any other sort of hypothetical we can insert into that, someone who wasn't an academic, but who was a person of color and, you know, black, brown, Asian, what have you. And Bad Empanada said, I know more about your struggles and white supremacy than you do. That's just wrong. And it's obviously worse, I would argue, from an academic standpoint, that he would say, well, I know more than any person of color, but also academics. You know, so it's just like compound bullshit.
The gist of what I wanted to do here in this first part is to show that Bad Empanada is not materially critiquing actual stances I have. I do not think Jewish supremacy is a fake thing. And so when I see, and this is not to denigrate the validity behind the concept of Jewish supremacy, which I have learned more about since I've been having these discussions behind the scenes. But as they've been as they materialize for content. I do not think Zionism is a Nazi dog whistle. I do not think that anti-Semitism is the most important pressing issue, and that global anti-Semitism is the problem right now in the world.
This is not the only interpretation. I've seen people talk about gentrification. I've seen people talk about colonialism and American exceptionalism and immigration stuff. So I'm not saying this is the only interpretation, but this is something to see. Yeah.
I do not think that people should support and stand for Graham Plattner. I do not like Graham Plattner because Graham Plattner is like most white leftists, and it's fucking obvious. Just like I gotta deal with white leftists in real life, we might have to deal with a couple of motherfuckers in government. I'm gonna take Graham Plattner over whichever Republican figure they gonna throw out there. But I made that video, I made that Graham Plattner video explicitly to point out how the white left turns off their critical faculties when the strong authoritative man says the things they wish they could say, but they can't or don't. So that is why I did not bother to respond to Bad Empanada's critiques of me. They're not real critiques. They're only there, as I showed earlier, to create engagement for his channel. And it's really obvious once you just actually listen to what I'm saying and then look at how his channel responds to me being around. The bottom line is, you put my face in the thumbnail, you gon' do numbers, period. You put my face in the thumbnail.
I'll have to put your face on a thumbnail, see if that's true.
To create drama, ooh, now you gotta wait. But I told Noah Sampson on numerous occasions, not like serious, not like deep, not like heated, I really don't fuck with Bad Empanada. I don't think you should fuck with Bad Empanada, but you do what you think is best. At a certain point, Noah started fucking with Bad Empanada. And I'ma just be real, Bad Empanada is using Noah to sane wash and normalize his presence in the online left.
Yeah, absolutely, because Bad Empanada is like a puppeteer, and he's using Noah Sampson as a sock puppet, basically being like, look at, mustache cat boy Noah Sampson, and he's using him to whitewash his really toxic aspects. And it is possible, even though Bad Empanada is an incredibly unlikable person, unlikable people can manipulate others. They use someone who's more likable than they are externally to get their foot in the door. The fox in the hen house, basically.
That is what Bad Empanada has done to Noah in the last 2 years. I get the appeal of a Bad Empanada. One, that authoritative edgelord nonsense. But two, to give Bad Empanada credit, he has been principled on anti-Zionism well before it was popular. So Bad Empanada deserved a little bit of a wave after October 7th when people started talking more about that issue.
I would say that I didn't really start noticing him acting sus for about another year after that. Well, okay, October 7th, 2023. So I finished my PhD a day after that, and then I wrote about those events on the 13th. And then after that, it was Friday the 13th, no less. And I remember talking about it quite critically, seeing that Bad Empanada was talking about it quite critically, and I'm like, okay. And then basically sometime in 2024, I want to say partway through the year, so within 6 months of that, he was acting sus. And he was acting in ways where I'm like, okay, why do I get the feeling? And if he hadn't radicalized in private yet, it didn't take him very long. And desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think that was probably his rationale. But it didn't really take him very long after October 7th to really start playing the fool.
But people like Bad Empanada are also why Noah Sampson is getting sued right now. That crossover, the way that Bad Empanada's community brigades and pushes anyone that allows them in their space. Everybody that used to rock with Bad Empanada, that gave him a little love after October 7, 2023, has now blocked him except for Noah Sampson. Noah Sampson's the only one, and maybe Cavernacle, they're the only ones that have not said to themselves, this guy's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, Signifier, if you go to my channel, to my videos, there's a point where I scroll down here. No, it's here somewhere. Where I ask in this video, apologizing for misapplied research, asking for the Cabernacle's help with Bad Empanada, where the Cabernacle has gone out of his way not to say anything about Bad Empanada at all. And I explicitly, when Trash Discourse basically laid out my research and linked to it, they did a lot of things pretty haphazardly, and at the end of the day I was apologizing to the Cabernacle for what Trash Discourse said, not because of what I said about Bad Empanada, but they really screwed the pooch as far as all that went. But I remember saying to the Cabernacle, look, the research that they linked, I know that you know about it now because you responded to their video. Could you perhaps say something about Bad Empanada? And the Cabernacle never did. And that's pretty fucked up because they spend all this time, a white guy with a beard who is saying Palestine is someone that needs to be fought for. And unlike Bad Empanada, they don't strike me as bigoted in any obvious way, but by failing to talk out about Bad Empanada when they have access to all this information, they're basically covering for someone. They pride themselves, the Cabernacle prides themselves as someone who speaks truth to power and is willing to criticize this or that, Vosh, for instance. But here they are refusing to talk about Bad Empanada. And if Noah Sampson is having Bad Empanada on their channel when FD said, look, don't do this, that's not a good look. But again, if you're stringing someone up, a clown, to beat them and make money come out to help Palestinians, that I can understand to some extent. But when you do it, be like, hey, person that I'm basically fleecing right now to help out the Palestinians, you're a Nazi. Do that. Make them look bad. Don't just beat them. Don't turn them into Christ on the cross. Let people know that you're punching a Nazi. And that's something that Noah Sampson hasn't done, and the Cabernacle too. So FD is absolutely correct about that.
And unhinged, and I probably shouldn't invite him into my space. And this is a
Yeah, because he's a Nazi.
criticism of Hassan too. First off, Hassan should have never been in the podcast with Ethan Klein. Let's just put that out there.
Right.
He's admitted that himself. This is just keeping it real. This is probably gonna be labeled, while always keep the white left at arm's reach or some shit like that. Because the bottom line is, white leftists are white. And the average white leftist does not understand how whiteness works within them. The average white...
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to spend time with non-white people. In my case, I was radicalized racially by dating someone who wasn't white. My co-writer and co-editor, Bay Ryan, is Mali and Irish. And I learned a lot about racial struggles, BIPOC more broadly, through that. I didn't learn it from people that I went to high school with who were predominantly white, I can tell you that much.
Left does not understand how whiteness shapes their worldview. They understand that whiteness is a problem. They understand that racism is a problem.
Right, but they're coming at it from like an in-group perspective, which isn't the same thing.
Might even be anti-racist, the best of the best. But they fail to recognize how the experience in the world as a white person shapes the things that they are comfortable with, the people they expose themselves to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We're always going to have some degree of racial privilege. I have race privilege, obviously. I'm white. I have white privilege. The kind of oppression that I experience is as a trans woman, but I'm still a white trans woman. And if I'm trying to get any kind of semblance of understanding from an out group, I'm going to talk to a member of an out group. The pedagogy of the oppressed is you go and talk to the oppressed. So if I'm discussing race, I'm going to talk to a racial minority. If I'm talking about the oppression of gender nonconforming people, I'm not going to talk to a straight person.
So Hassan should never had a podcast with Ethan Klein in the first place. Ethan Klein was a edgelord, quasi alt-right guy for the longest time. There's a whole like 10-minute video of him saying the N-word. So L on Hassan for even like allowing himself to engage with Ethan Klein as much as he did.
But I would argue that the debate that he had with Bad Empanada and Noah Sampson's stream is he wasn't able to call him out and be like, look, you're a Nazi, dude. Even though at that point, if memory serves, like he had certainly done a lot of the things I had already criticized him of at that point in time, if memory serves. I don't know if it was before or after he crashed out in September 2025. It may have been a couple of months before that, but I got news for people. He's been fash for a while, just because he hadn't gone mask off yet.
When the issue of Zionism became a preeminent problem on the world stage, Hassan found it no longer no longer possible to associate with Ethan Klein. I didn't follow the beef. I don't know the full thing, but it was no longer possible. And because Ethan Klein is, I'll just say, has a unique energy about him, and his fan base is cuckoo bananas, any and everyone that had any tangential connection to Hassan was pulled into this beef with Ethan Klein. And they tried it with me. I started getting messages on Instagram and my email saying,
do you see what they're doing to Ethan Klein? You need to say something to Hassan and to Noah Sampson.
And I was like, what are y'all talking about? I don't know. I don't rock with him at all. I made a post about it. I said, please don't bring me into this before I make a video about you. And I left it at that. But Bad Empanada, if you want an attack dog for Zionists, for liberal Zionists, who you gonna call? Bad Empanada. Bad Empanada is a genuine attack dog for the topic. It made sense at the time, I'm sure, to say,
you know what? Maybe we allow Bad Empanada to associate with us to bolster our critiques of Ethan Klein and Zionism.
Now, mind you, this also contradicts Bad Empanada and his principled stance, because Bad Empanada had been critiquing and talking bad about Hassan for a minute up to that point. But as soon as Hassan allowed him a window into his circle, Bad Empanada was down for the clown. And
yeah, absolutely. Suddenly, I remember watching a part of that debate where the animosity between them was almost performative to a certain extent, because it was lucrative to bash Hassan, and it's perfectly valid to critique Hassan, but about a great many things in his treatment of people, of black people, and his usage of just calling black people black in ways that sound kind of slur-like through their context, and his treatment of various minorities in ways that frankly sound like they're coming from a white straight guy for all intents and purposes. He's Turkish, but he passes for white, let's just put it that way, and Hassan isn't above a reproach either. But Bad Empanada was basically like, Hassan this and on that, you need to do this. Bernie Sanders is on your stream, you need to critique them. The moment the two of them were on a stream together, Bad Empanada was like Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, where he was just very polite in this eerie kind of way. He struck me as very toothless because he got in at that point, and then suddenly he was on Noah Sampson's stream. He had Noah Sampson's ear. Mission accomplished, because now he's on again, and I saw that. You're having this guy on again? And that pissed me off. And then I saw F.D. Signifier doing it, and I'm like, no, F.D., what are you doing? But hearing F.D. talk here, it's actually pretty refreshing. It's a situation where I was kind of worried that I haven't actually seen any of the footage of him talking about Empanada, but hearing him talk about this here, it's like, okay, yeah, it sounds like, FD isn't fooled by Bad Empanada's bullshit. I do think that he took his sweet fucking time saying anything about it. You're waiting to say something now? But, again, better late than never.
Noah, for whatever reason, has always felt like there was more use for Bad Empanada than it actually was. So both Noah and Hassan attach themselves to Bad Empanada, and understand when you do content with or about a person, you are connecting your communities. There's multiple valuable benefits to doing that, which is why for the longest I was not going to respond to Bad Empanada, because I did not want to create any type of connection between my content and his.
Well, I would argue you can respond as an academic. Just release a piece about it. I mean, you're like, okay, if I talk about this, then, it's just our communities are going to connect. Well, I got news for you. That's just how people work. I'm not saying you have to have him on, but you could critique him, do something where you talk about him in like a public service announcement. Ding, 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 the guy's a Nazi. If you can't do that, what kind of whistleblower are you? And if you're not a whistleblower, what are you doing? And again, we're not talking about blowing the whistle on some giant company. We're talking about someone within the left, and you're saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that, Hassan. You shouldn't have done that, Noah Sampson. But by the way, I'm not going to say anything because I was worried that I might get embroiled. Well, now you fucking stepped in it, huh? You probably should have said something sooner, huh? And now here we are. I'm sorry, too little, too late. What's done is done. And better late than never, but also where were you when something could have been said sooner? And you're like, I didn't want to get involved. Look how that turned out.
From my end. That's why this is going on the streaming channel. Hassan quickly recognized.
Right. And I understand, you want to keep it for those who know. Someone like my gay ass is going to watch this and be like, okay, I know what you're doing. You're quarantining this, and you want to protect your audience from someone like Bad Empanada, who's a bad actor. And I can take it and run with it because I don't give a fuck. Bad Empanada is my mortal enemy. So I'm going to take what you're doing and I'm going to respond to it. I feel like it's kind of a wuss move on your part. Oh, you're just protecting your fans. Way to infantilize them. It's like, I get it. It's a preacher looking after their flock, Martin Luther King, that kind of thing. Fine. But at the end of the day, if you isolate people and you insulate them to such a degree, they're going to find out about Bad Empanada anyways. You just want to abdicate yourself of responsibility, I think. And you're doing perhaps more harm than good by keeping quiet. Martin Luther King, at the end of the day, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. That includes you. If you are putting this off onto a streams channel, which is a lot larger than mine, people are still going to find out about it, and you have to look after your own interests. I have thoughts and feelings about that, but I don't think that you're really above reproach in this situation either. If this is largely about money for you and protecting your fans and your business opportunities and things like that, that is a point of criticism that could be levied against you. Point of fact, I'm doing it right now. I hear you and I see what you're saying, but I don't entirely agree with your methodology. But have no fear, Persephone is here.
Bad Empanada is Bad Empanada. Noah, not so much. Quick behind the scenes, I agree to come and help Noah fundraise. I'm very generous with doing shit like this. It's really not a big deal. And we have a brief discussion about Bad Empanada behind the scenes. And I basically say this. I would prefer you not bring Bad Empanada on. I don't want to really talk about Bad Empanada.
And that's fair. Again, you should say something, just a basic statement. But if you could limit it and not just give him a microphone, because then you're just debating Donald Trump or something, and it is possible. You do want to control that. I do agree. So yeah, absolutely. I have things that I would criticize you for keeping quiet, but the fact that you're still saying something and that you're being public about that, that's commendable.
If you decide you want to bring him on, I can't stop you, but I would appreciate if we didn't do that. He agrees. And I think that was genuine. I'm not saying that Noah lied or tricked me into creating a situation where we were going to have a debate. But the problem is, as soon as I'm on the screen, we have Bad Empanada chatters trying to ask me questions, saying, repeating his talking points.
You suddenly find yourself in a situation, why do I hear boss music, basically? And you're like, Noah, I said, and then he's like, oh, don't worry about it. And then, surprise, you get jump scared by Bad Empanada. Like, at the end of the day, it's one of those situations where I think Noah Samson means well, and they do really good work with Palestine. And I can understand them getting misled, but also them misleading you to a certain extent, where they made a promise to you, and then you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you didn't want to do this. And at that point, I would ask, like, okay, why did you actually do it then? That's what I want to know.
So at a certain point, I say, okay, let me just address it a little bit. I play Noah the clip that Bad Empanada posted of me labeled Zionist is a dog whistle and that FD Signifier claims Zionism is a Nazi dog whistle. But this opens up a conversation.
Yeah, it does. You're gonna have to deal with someone like Bad Empanada, and eventually, and in my opinion, okay, just hit him with both barrels. Just be like, look, motherfuckers are Nazi. Make it loud and clear. Be super open about that, and because if you don't want to do that on your main channel, if you don't want to shout it from the rooftops, it sounds like a money thing. Oh, well, what if my fan base gets divided? Well, you should probably hold your fan base accountable then, and I get it. You need to basically make strategic decisions where, okay, can we do this in such a way where it's not like a wrecking ball? I get that. But at the end of the day, this is going to develop into a situation that you can't fully account for or control. And as an activist, you do have to kind of have something of a wrecking ball, but you have to be the one holding it. And if you don't, you can find yourself getting manipulated into situations where you're going to have to respond anyways.
And this is kind of a tough conversation. Me and Noah are not fully aligned on how we perceive the influencer economy and this subject. And so we have a relatively normal conversation. It's probably a conversation I would prefer not to have publicly, but it is what it is. I'm fine with it. Despite my critiques of Noah in the moment, I trust Noah Samson. I don't think he's a grifter or that he's in the wrong place. But at a certain point, Bad Empanada pops up in the chat and he tweets Noah Samson invites Zionists to his stream to slander anti-Zionists as Nazis for naming Jewish supremacy.
Yeah, the trap is sprung, and now you have to fight your way out of it. So sooner or later, I get where you're coming from here, where it's like you trust someone who's easy to trust. Bad Empanada's hard to trust because he's so obviously cartoonishly a dick, but when you're dealing with someone like Noah Samson, where you don't think that you want to do this, right? We had to talk about this, right? So I get it. That kind of thing sucks.
So he tweets that out, and at a certain point, he's in the chat. There he is. And so he's begging to come up at this point. So I want you to look at my energy now when talking to a person I trust, trying to understand something. We're just having a conversation.
On the stage, rather than like behind the scenes. And like debates, I think we both feel similarly about debates, which is that like it is ultimately theater. Speaking of which, I
would argue that, yeah, there's theater, but how is it being used? Who's benefiting? And I would say in this situation, you want to know who benefits most from this kind of thing? Bad Empanada. So again, you have to control for it in ways that minimize what his ability to benefit is. You take the wrecking ball out of his hand and then you beat him over the head with it. You don't invite him into a space where he's ultimately going to use this and treat you like a stepping stone, which is what he's doing.
Missed to not mention it. I think Bad Empanada is in the chat. Everyone's yelling at me to bring him on. You don't have to. I know it's cutting into, it's 10:48.
I don't have, the kids have just gotten lunch. I don't have much to do.
Okay.
So let's roll.
You want me to bring him?
Okay, so all right, yeah. Like earlier, for instance, I had basically, when I mentioned Fairy Queen Rickspin, actually responded to me and said, surprised to see FD playing in the mud with BE. It turns out, plot twist, that FD was actually blindsided here. And then it's like, all right, when their back is up against the wall, they're like, okay, well, I got some time. But then you want to know what I would have done. It's like, I have enough time to basically take this motherfucker to school and just say it like it is. You don't have to be polite to Nazis. So this is the part that I'm really curious about, because I'm like, all right, well, do you just call him a Nazi to his face? Because that's what I would have done. Oh, yeah, you think you're happy to be on stream with me? I'm going to make this as unpleasant for you as possible. I'll just start trotting out all of this evidence. Exhibit A. Here's him calling trans, furry, plural, non-white people useless eaters. You know, nice and simple. Bam. All right. You have something to say about that, dude? Make him debate something that is not debatable. You know, make him try and defend something that is indefensible and lead off from that. So, and again, I'm not trying to tell you, because I don't know what you said, but I just get the feeling that you were perhaps not as rough with him as I would have been.
Come on. All right.
So I made the mistake of engaging around the topic publicly with Noah around Bad Empanada. And so at the end of the day, it was only fair to allow him to come up and defend himself and confront me on things I had said. I broke my own rule. I had to suffer the consequences for it. Hence this video. But I got...
Okay, fair enough.
I gotta give this critique to Noah. Noah's allowance of the Bad Empanada stink on his public presence is what allows this to happen. If I'd have been able to come here and help him raise money and talk about propaganda, and he doesn't have Bad Empanada stands in his chat, we probably don't get to this point. But it is what it is. I'm too nice.
Right, but you're also someone who hasn't taken a strong stance on Bad Empanada. And if you perhaps would have made your views known on Bad Empanada much sooner, you could have gotten out in front of this. But you didn't. You know, again, sometimes you got to be mean with Nazis, and you have to risk losing some fans over it. Protecting your fans, call it what you will. And the reality is, yeah, you are too nice, and it bit you in the ass.
It is what it is.
I always end up doing this. I did this last time I was talking to...
If you've ever seen me in a conversation that looks like a debate, I'm not debating. I'm not debating. I don't debate. I don't believe in debate.
Really? Okay. Keep telling yourself that.
And I've said publicly on multiple occasions, I'm not a good debater, but I'm a fucking liar. I'm a fucking liar. I went to an HBCU. Oh, yeah. So somebody pointed out that this is also exactly what Bad Empanada did to Noah maybe last year when he did a live stream. That Noah had Hassan on and Bad Empanada jumped into his chat and forced his way into a conversation with Hassan.
Yeah, he's a fucking con man.
Again, clout demon. We're not going to watch this in full.
Jeff is on the line.
But I want you to peep Bad Empanada's posture and his energy.
Hi, Jeff.
FD, you love to...
Look how
how
energetic he is ready, right?
Yeah, he's been planning this because this is all something that he can use to give himself a wider stage. So at this point, you know, you can't be polite, you can't be gentle with him at this point. You have to do something, because if you don't, the cat's out of the bag at this point. So what do you do?
I want you to peep how energetic and confident and ready he is for this conversation. He is so excited.
Great idea.
It's my failure on not staying on cold myself.
Zionist Nazis. I don't even know how that came up, but that's why I'm here.
Wait, so say that one more time, sorry.
He decided to call me a Nazi for being too anti-Zionist for his taste.
I never said that. Never have said that.
I'd say it. I'd be like, yeah, you're a fucking Nazi. I'll say it. But when I would say something like that, I would back it up with a wide variety of evidence. And again, you know, this gives me like politeness energy. It's like, okay, you can call Bad Empanada a Nazi, just don't do it for the reasons that he's saying. Do it because he's a fucking, because of his actions, because of how he treats people. You know, it's like the guy's fash. It's demonstrable at this point. It's not, oh, it's kind of weird. You know, it's like, as an academic, as an activist, as some combination of those things on your stream, you have to be able to call a spade a spade. In Bad Empanada's case, a Nazi. And that kind of thing is something that you have to take some accountability here. And I'm seeing it, oh, I never said that about you. Well, now you're debating him. And now you are falling into the same trap that Noah Samson did. It's like, all right, at this point, just bring out the heavy artillery. Just be like, look, here's all this fucking evidence. Gee, if only you had this giant dossier. And you don't even have to read the whole thing. Just look at the images at the start of what he did. And, you know, I don't have a lot of reach. I'm a radical sex worker, someone who is difficult to promote on YouTube. Absolutely, I get it. But all this information has been out there for some time. And if you didn't get it from me, you could have got it from someone else. But here you are falling into a trap with him. The trap is sprung. And the first thing you said is, I never called him a Nazi. It's like, no, call him a Nazi because that's what he is. And just do it on your own terms. And if you were more active about this, instead of trying to protect your interests, your assets, your audience, sooner or later, we're past the point of doing that. You have to take some risks. And for your trying not to take risks, you suddenly find yourself staring down the barrel of Bad Empanada's proverbial gun. And you are at a disadvantage here.
Never have called him a Nazi. White supremacists.
Splitting hairs, dude. Splitting hairs.
I pointed out that he unironically uses neo-Nazi terms.
If you unironically use neo-Nazi terms, what does that make you? Call him a Nazi. Grow a pair. Jesus fucking Christ.
But I'm not going to call him a Nazi.
Why not?
I don't think that counts. I don't think that...
It doesn't count? Are you stupid? Really? What do they have to do for them to be a Nazi? Pull your head out of your ass.
That works. He does live in Argentina. There's a lot of comparisons I can make. So we...
Yeah. Like, again, it's not a binary. It's not like, well, you either are or you aren't. Like, there's some gray area there, dude. But here you are waffling and just being like, oh, gee, I don't know. And you're doing it on stream with him. You're giving him power. Because you look like you're not willing to commit. And who's taking advantage of that? He is. He's got your number as far as that goes. And you're trying to basically justify it after the fact. And it's like, no, call him a Nazi. If you can't blow the whistle, he'll just come in and take what he wants.
Start out with a lie. And this is the thing that he's done this entire time.
Yes, you did. I
didn't.
Give me a break. Anyway, let's talk about the
Wait, no. Did he say it? Is that something you believe in?
Again, and here you are laughing with, at what he's saying. And it's like, no, it's like you have to be rough. Okay. This was an opportunity for you to actually just be like, all right, dude, you want to talk with me? Let's talk. And you're kind of beating around the bush at this point in the video, but also here. Motherfuckers are Nazi, okay? You don't have to belong to the Nazi party to be a Nazi. It's like there are crypto-fascists, there are neo-Nazis, and there are people. A white supremacist, for all intents and purposes, has the same function. All right, and you can't get hung up on aesthetics, labels, and you call someone a Nazi, it's because they have a fascist function. And you can even have someone who's against the Palestinian genocide. Look at what's happening in American politics right now. And they're still Christo-fascists.
He said, oh, he uses Nazi dog whistles for not caring.
Did you use a Nazi dog whistle?
The typical bullshit.
Did you use a Nazi dog whistle? Did you call BGR?
You're talking about Nazi dog whistles.
And again, he's dog walking you at this point. He's walking you through things that he wants you to do this. Again, this is not a good look. Because all you'd have to do is be like, look, motherfucker, yeah, you're a Nazi. Let's have that conversation. You want to go there? We'll go there. And then just give him something that he can't defend, because there's a lot of it.
Do you
Answer the
understand
question
something?
you're evading. Did you use a Nazi dog whistle?
I'm going to
to
explain
malign a
something
black
to
man
you.
on
I'm going to
Twitter?
explain a black man.
So you
You can't have like a facts and logic kind of thing. You're trying to do like this reasoned argument with him. Just just go for the jugular, dude. Quit beating around the bush.
see immediately we're evading. And he's evading because Bad Empanada acts like this on Twitter. He acts like this in comment sections, but he doesn't do this in his content. It is a strategy for this type of debate grow creator.
Yes, I would say that he's this weaselly fuck when it comes to a lot of his interactions with other people. He uses it as a lever, basically. And when it comes to his essays, but again, I'm familiar with his older work, he wouldn't really lean into that quite so much.
I'm gonna go somewhere, get in front of people, and act like I don't have any sense, and trick them into engaging with me so that I can siphon and vampire off of their presence for
Yeah, something that Nazis do, by the way.
my channel in the comments.
Read my piece, State Vampirism. This is State Vampirism 101. It's what he does. You call him a Nazi, call him a Stalinist, a tanky, whatever. It's exploitation. And that's what he's doing. And he's doing it to you, and you can't be like, well, get off me, motherfucker, and then lay into him. If you can't just stake this motherfucker and show the world, that you're taking a hard stance against him, that's a problem.
Content. The thing that was most revealing to me is how committed he is to, at no point during this debate does he acknowledge that it's not good for him to use Nazi dog whistles and hate speech casually in the same way that Nazis do. He feels like he should be able to act like a Nazi because he's not a Nazi. He's actually an anti-Zionist. And Zionism is the real problem.
And how dare you critique me acting like a Nazi when there's a genocide going on?
If you're acting like a Nazi, guess what? You're a Nazi, ipso facto, by virtue of action. Just own it.
I should be able to act like a Nazi. There's a genocide going on. Why are you wasting time talking about my Nazi?
Yeah, no, that's, again, you don't have to prove every single point here. You don't have to walk people through it. Just lead off with a 1-2, a knockout combo. And then afterwards, you can dissect his corpse.
Adjacent behavior.
Mind you, again, he
Figuratively.
clearly understands the problem of this. This is a video he made last year critiquing one of his own former peers on them frontlining anti-Semitic Nazi-coded sentiment in their content. But a year later, when things are drying up, when he has to get my attention, suddenly he doesn't understand that.
Or not? Okay.
I
Here's what I'm gonna
give a
explain
fuck
to
if he's
you.
black or not. I think
Have you heard of the Jewish
You are
sect?
avoiding a
Chabad,
direct
Chabad.
question.
I'm answering the question to you.
So I keep kind of like, so once I realized immediately, because I'm not as bad as a debater I make myself out to be, immediately after this moment, I say, oh, he really is just Vosh. He really is just Destiny.
Yeah, and Vosh is a Nazi. Destiny's, it's, again, you're not just, Nazis, the way that they existed in Nazi Germany, don't really exist anymore. It's something that evolves, it changes, it's modular, it evolves. And so when you use the word Nazi, you're not talking about members of the Third Reich, you're talking about Christo-fascists, you're talking about Nazis in various places or people who are functionally of a given regressive, reactionary kind of behavior. Like, again, it's meant to be shorthand and not something that just describes things perfectly, because most of human language doesn't function like that.
I wasn't sure. So when I noticed that he was unwilling to just genuinely say maybe using Nazi hate speech is weird publicly, I was like, oh, that's it. We got him. All right,
We need context. Have you heard of the Jewish sect Chabad, however you pronounce it in Hebrew? No fucking way.
No, I'm not very knowledgeable on this topic. No, I don't study this. I'm not a historian. I'm sorry. I don't study Judaism. I don't study Hebrew. I'm not an expert on Jewish history. I know about media tropes. I know about social theory. And so he tries to pull this edgelord gotcha.
You don't know about the thing that I know about?
I'm fucking blown away. But anyway, this is the...
Well, and the reality of calling someone a Nazi is, I don't know all there is to know about the entire histories of white supremacy or white supremacy in a Jewish ethno-state, for instance, in the state of Israel, and the way that plays out. I don't know every single tiny little detail, but if you have to know all there is to know to call out something that's as obvious as Bad Empanada, like, that's self-defeating. You have to know enough, and you have to have a certain amount of conviction and be principled enough to take a risk at some point. So again, this kind of feels like something that, if FD says, oh, it's Noah kind of tricked me, maybe. I'm not saying he did, but I'm not saying he didn't. And, I wasn't willing to take a stance because I have to protect my fan base from Bad Empanada. And yet, oops, I just walked into this, and now I don't debate people, but here I am debating him. It's like, dude, this should have been a 5-minute conversation, and you should have just fucking scorched earth it. And what I mean by that is you should just be like, yeah, you're a fucking Nazi, dude. Because if you can't do that when you're dealing with something like Bad Empanada, then I'm sorry, you're not that effective as a debater, an educator, an activist. And I don't want to speak too soon because maybe you reach a point where you do, but you didn't lead off with that. So I don't know. I don't feel especially confident about your abilities to critique someone like that. You're like, oh, a white supremacist isn't a Nazi. Really? Okay.
The biggest religious Jewish group in the entire world.
Yeah, because he's a bad actor, dude. He's going to obfuscate, deny, and wrestle out of you whatever he wants. He's going to dictate the conversation. You're being taken for a ride.
That's not living well, but go ahead.
I mean, you denied it, and that's the entire reason we're talking here.
No, it's not.
I think before.
And so at this point, I also realized, wait, I start to wonder, wait, does he know he's been clipping me out of context and incomplete for the last month?
What do you think?
Does he just not even realize what he's doing? Because, I've already proved that this is not real. Is he playing dumb? So...
Again, you're treating him partially in good faith here. You have to treat him like he's the enemy. He is the enemy. Okay, you can't be fooled by any aspect of him. That's, again, why you have to treat him like he's a Nazi. You're like, no, he's not a Nazi. Yeah, he is.
I'm like, wait, he's genuinely just not good at this. He thinks he's about to own me with facts and logic, I guess.
I don't care about that. I care about you exposing him for what he is. Again, if you're calling for the genocide of trans people and other minorities, that's Nazi shit, okay? And if you can't say anything about that, then I don't know. It's making me look at you sideways because I already think he sucks. Noah, it's Noah's Noah. And then there's you, someone I have critiqued before. And if you can't basically bite his head off at the start, then what's the point of this? What are you proving? That you're smarter than him? I don't care about that.
Yes. I think Bad Empanada actually is just really racist and thought I was dumb.
Yeah, he probably did.
I think he just genuinely thought he was smarter than me and that I wouldn't be quick enough to recognize what he was doing.
Yeah, that's what Nazis do. They think that they're better than other people.
That's the only thing that makes sense of the situation.
For asserting his positions, you should let him, just explain.
Okay, great. So what I was saying there is
I also want to point out how disrespectful Bad Empanada is to Noah. Noah, please clock this. Please clock how this man is using you.
Yeah, he is using you, but he's also using you, dude. It's not just Noah. You're both being taken advantage of here, and your audience is going to see this. It's like, oh, if you're trying real hard to quarantine Bad Empanada. This is what my friend was talking about, Fairy Queen Rickspin, playing in the mud with Bad Empanada. You roll around with pigs, you're going to get covered in shit. You're trying to play chess with a pig, and it's not going to benefit you. Instead, no, you stick that motherfucker and let him bleed out. If you prick a fascist, well, if you prick a liberal, if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds. In this case, he's already basically mask off at this point. But, just treat him like a liberal. Scratch him. See what bleeds. If you don't have claws, you don't have teeth in this situation, it's not good activism. And you got to learn to use your claws, and you can't just be like, oh, Noah this, Noah that. Forget about Noah. Okay, focus on yourself and focus on the people that you need to protect from Bad Empanada. Not just Noah. Noah's a big boy. Focus on other people who need your help.
He's just disrespected you there, and he does it multiple times. Maybe they're cool like that. Me and Bill and John and BP and other people, we get it in, but I don't know if we've ever talked to each other like this publicly.
Live in this time of actual real Jewish supremacy. Jewish supremacists are committing genocide against people who aren't Jews. Now you're pretending you believe in that. Oh my God. But anyway, we have this situation, right, where Jewish supremacists are doing.
God, he's such a fuck. I would not be calm. I would tone police me all you want. I don't give a fuck. I would be fucking rude to this guy. I would not just sit there and take it. Like, no offense, but it's like you're being too nice to this guy.
And one of the most important Jewish sects in the world, along with many other Jews outside of this Jewish sect.
I'm just going to summarize. This is him explaining where the word goy comes from. And I want you to peep that. He keeps bringing it to goy. And as I've looked at his followers online in the comment section and on Twitter, they keep bringing it to goy. But I have to point out, he said Zog slave. Goy comes from all these Jewish people, this Jewish sect he's talking about. That's goy. Zog comes from the Turner Diaries. So we're immediately being dishonest, and I clocked this immediately. I'm realizing he just thought I was dumb.
That role basically is to be...
Okay, I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how good of a debater you are. Just call him a Nazi, please. Jesus Christ.
Slaves for Jews. They are basically like cattle. Mm-hmm. So do you think in this moment, there might be more utility to perhaps not screaming Nazi whenever someone throws these sorts of terms back at these people who are literal Jewish supremacists?
Are you a Jewish
These are people who literally think. No, I'm explaining this to you. So goy, as the way these people use it, is a slur. It's a slur. They use it against Palestinians. They kill them.
I correct them.
Zog slave, goy slave. Who cares? Who gives a fuck?
And now I have him. And now it's a wrap. Zog slave, goy slave. Who cares? This is it.
Again, you're presenting it in this way where you're like, I defeated him with facts and logic, and now look at me. I'm so much smarter than him. You are treating it like you can debate your way out of a situation like this and just prove and then expect people to get that. This is kayfabe. This isn't some fancy academic debate. Okay, fair point. You got him on that. You think anyone's going to remember that? If they did, why do you have to explain it? People are going to walk away from this and they are going to focus on the dumbest stuff. They're going to get misled. And all of this nuance that you're trying to point out is going to get lost in the dust-up. This is not about appearing smarter than the enemy. It is about acknowledging them as a threat and demasking them. Okay, this is a Scooby-Doo situation. You gotta demask them. You can't. When your house is on fire, you don't debate Faust. You put out the fucking fire. And the fire in this situation is Bad Empanada. And all you're doing is feeding him through a debate. Again, this is literally food for him. And it doesn't matter. You can be, look at how I totally styled on the baby and I stuck the spoon in his mouth a specific way. Well, congratulations. Unless you're exposing him as an enemy, as a threat, he's winning in this situation. It doesn't matter how smart you look. He's still a threat. And you have to disarm that and expose him for what he is. And if you don't do that, he's still a problem. It doesn't matter how smart you are or appear and standing next to him, he's still the Nazi in the room. And you have to address that in a way that exposes and denormalizes him. You can't just focus on being smart next to him because you're ultimately having a conversation with him.
This is the end of the debate at this point. He says,
okay. Does the conversation stop here?
I don't care if it's a term from Jewish supremacists or from white supremacist neo-Nazis. I want to be able to use it and you shouldn't critique me. I do.
Yeah, and I will agree, FD Signifier is not wrong. You can point that out, but also call him a Nazi because he is one. Because he's doing the same shit that a Nazi would do, which is lie and mislead in the exact ways, the exact kind of fuckery that any other fascist would do. They're bad actors. They steal in bad faith by accusing other people of doing what they're doing and policing language. Except when they should have unlimited freedom to do whatever they want, but you don't get to hold them accountable. It's what Martin Luther King called negative freedom, negative justice, but it's a fascist form of that.
I think it's weird for left. So first off, let's clarify. Thank you for that filibuster. Did you or did you not call BGR or BRG? I'm not familiar. Did you or did you not call him a Zog slave on Twitter?
Absolutely, that term is fucking hilarious. Why shouldn't I?
Nazi hate speech is hilarious.
Yeah, and at that point, it doesn't matter if he thinks it's funny or he's serious. He's still a Nazi. You can have Nazi comedians.
Why shouldn't I use it? Nazi hate speech is hilarious. Why shouldn't I use it? And that's when I
you call him a Nazi, right?
load the gun. And y'all know when it's coming. I load the gun in the back of my head like, oh, it's hilarious. Hate speech is hilarious. And things that Nazis say are hilarious.
You call him a Nazi, right?
When I say it wokely. Oosey Juicy, he should just call you a slur. Wait for the hook. Wait for the hook. It's hilarious. I don't think you should, because I don't think we should be operational. But I hold it. Nazi terminology to attack. I want him to. I think that's weird, unprincipled, and shitty. And I think that's why you have the reputation you have.
These are all just like, oh, I think it's weird, shitty. Dude, who gives a fuck, okay?
Who gives a fuck?
I care.
Listen, you can.
You're Jewish supremacy right now, okay? And you're splitting hairs because I threw out this funny term as someone who supports.
It's not a funny term, it's a slur.
I want to take a moment to point out that Noah Sampson's in the corner here. This is supposed to be a stream to help him build a legal defense against Ethan Klein, who is trying to paint him as an anti-Semite. And I am here having to debate his friend on why using Nazi hate speech casually but wokely is a bad thing.
Oh, that's so bad. Oh my God.
But he thinks it's hilarious. Who cares? This is L. Noah for putting himself in this position.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it looks really bad.
But this is L. Bad Empanada, who clearly does not give a fuck about Noah. You're calling me Jewish supremacy, but you're using their terminology the same way they would use it.
They wouldn't call someone a Zog slave.
What would they say?
Negatively. They want to hide that sort of thing. They want to hide this idea that...
So you're going to mask off as a Jewish supremacist.
What the fuck does that mean?
You're calling people, as you say, Jewish supremacist slurs publicly to malign them.
So Zog slave is not a Jewish supremacist slur.
Who was the origin point of the Zog? What are you saying about it?
BRG. It's a guy, BRG.
He called him a Zog.
He's a massive elector. You know, he's all the Zionist politicians.
I don't think it's really established in American or Western media apparatus that Zog is anything other than the dog whistle that it is. It's, you know.
How do you explain to someone that amplifying and normalizing Nazi is bad?
You don't, because he's a bad actor. You're treating him like he's like, and again, you're using this for your audience. You're kind of putting it off, and you're kind of keeping it on the down low as much as you can, low key. But no, it's like you treat him as a bad actor, which is what Nazis are. You don't kill home rule with kindness, my friend. You have to, in my opinion, you don't style on someone and then use that as like some kind of like clout points with your friends on your smaller channel. It's like, no, you put this on a fucking loudspeaker. Would you do this with Trump? No, you would probably like, he's a fucking Nazi, right? Because he is. Do the same thing with Bad Empanada. Because do you think that Bad Empanada, if he was in the same position as Trump, go to town, Donald, his own words, in saying that queer people are useless eaters, plural people, furries, neurodivergent people, people on the spectrum are useless eaters? He would absolutely do the same thing.
Shouldn't everyone be okay with saying, hey, the stuff that the Nazis do to critique Jewish people is not good, we won't use it. We won't censor that in our analysis. By the way, he has done this.
You guys both disagree with the framing that Zionists occupy the government, right? It's imperialism the other way around.
I mean, it depends. Are they Zionists in the government? Yes, that's Israel occupied the government.
But Israel doesn't control America.
Why are you worrying about this right now?
Well, because we're talking about the terminology of Zog.
Why can't I use hate speech from Nazis? Why are you being mean to me? I just want to act like a Nazi online to start shit with black people.
And that's because he's a Nazi, dude. Like, you don't have to have a fucking swastika tattoo on your arm. You don't have to be Edward Norton from American History X, a movie about white supremacists. Gee, I wonder what they are. Neo-Nazis, right? Bad Empanada is just on the same fascist spectrum. Scratch him, see what color his blood is. Is it fascist? Scratch, he could say, oh, I'm not a Nazi, but if you scratch him and he bleeds Nazi blood, mission accomplished.
So I can get likes and clicks so that they'll come and debate me. By the way, BRG did debate Bad Empanada, which he shouldn't have. I worry about it because
oh yeah, absolutely not. Like, if Bad Empanada said, hey, Persephone, debate me, it's going to be a short fucking debate because it's going to be, I'm like, you're a fucking Nazi, dude. Here's exhibit A, B, and C. And he's going to be like, oh yeah, well, you're a sex pest. And I'm like, no, I'm a sex worker academic. I'm very clear about that. Everything I have is age gated. And everything that I have is controlled in such a way so that you can't just walk up and access it. And, yeah, I might have a bikini photo in an essay or something like that that isn't age gated. But guess what? You can go on Google and find images like that on other blogs that aren't age gated either. It's like, it's one thing to be, critical about stuff in a way that actually makes sense. It's another to be puritanical. But I wouldn't have that conversation with Bad Empanada. This is for my audience now. I'd just be like, you're a Nazi. You're a SWERF. You're acting like a pimp. Here's examples of it. It's not a debate. I would just excoriate him and show all this evidence, and then I would leave. It wouldn't be a conversation. I would be dealing with the enemy, and I would treat him accordingly.
because I recognize that when you do shit like that, it's not in support of Palestinians. It's not even to attack Zionism or to attack Israel. It's to bring attention to your channel and your content. So that
yes, you're taking advantage of a genocide to enrich yourself.
Speculation of my motivations.
It doesn't matter. It's just speculation. That's your opinion, man. I'm just giving.
Yeah. Again, that's not an effective refutation of what F.D. Signifier is saying. If you're using Nazi slurs and dog whistles during the Palestinian genocide, it's just more bigotry on top of what's already happening.
My speculation. I'm telling you why I care. You can tell me why that's incorrect, but like telling me that that's my speculation is just saying.
So maybe the question: do you think is that in service of a broader political goal, Bad Empanada, when you use language like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the fact of the matter is, we live in a world that is Jewish exceptionalist, Jewish supremacist, and this framework, these sorts of frameworks, are what specifically led to the genocide.
So the only way
you can't use slurs because it affects other people. Just call them Nazis. Just call Zionists because that's what they are. If you use Nazi language to punch Nazis, that's what Nazis would have done against their victims. And if someone is a Zionist, not all Jewish people are Zionists. And if you're using a slur like that, it's going to ultimately do harm to people who aren't for the genocide, who are in fact opposing it. Anti-Zionists are going to catch strays, or not even strays, just it's going to get fired directly at them. You're contributing to a problem where bigotry is an issue by being bigoted yourself. Slurs aren't activism, as I said about Bad Empanada specifically a year ago now or thereabouts.
This answer makes sense is him saying we live in a world that is Jewish exceptionalists and Jewish supremacists, therefore we need to act like Nazis to attack them. That is what
yeah that is what Bad Empanada is saying.
This framing, the only framing that follows a logical through line to defend his use of that language. If I can't use the same critical framework of the Nazis, how are we gonna free Palestine? That he does know that that is wrong. This is his video. The Nazi dog whistle symbolizes
slurs. Who gives a fuck if there's some slur or whatever?
Who gives a fuck? While the people who are on the receiving end of the slurs.
Right.
About slurs. Most people who are affected by slurs.
So we're talking about actual political issues here, and your response is basically
we're talking about actual political issues here.
Oh, you're not nice enough.
No,
you use terms that
are not principled enough. Is that what you're doing? Is unprincipled?
This is not what principled. Being principled means actually sticking to what you believe in. Rather
No. Being principled means to principally put forth the movement.
You're not even responding to what I said.
Now, peep the shrinking, because I'm starting to turn up on him. Peep the difference in energy. You remember how he looked? Only put
You should have let off with that, my friend.
A still of his face at the beginning, and notice the difference. It's starting to happen, but we haven't even got there yet.
We were talking about political issues, Jewish supremacy in Israel, right?
Okay, let's go back.
That's why there are videos with your face. That's why there are thumbnails with your face on my channel.
Yes, let's go back. So
you're trying to reduce that to being nothing but videos.
I'm not trying to
just for the sake of putting your face in the thumbnail, just for the sake of talking about you.
No. I'm saying
no. What you're doing here is like accusing me of grifting. Okay, it's accusing me of like just chasing the views. If I wanted to chase the views, I would not be shitting on you. I'd be networking with you. I'd be networking with Hassan Pike. I'd be networking with people like you.
He did network with Hassan Pike, and Hassan kicked him out because he was like, "You and your group are gross, and I don't want to be bothered."
That is how I would actually have way more subscribers, way more views. If you don't rock the boat, you get way more fucking views.
Oh.
Well, yeah, but he's having his cake and eating it too, basically. Like, oh, if I was an open grifter, I'd have a larger channel. Yeah, he's not wrong, but he's basically doing a more veiled form of that. You know, he's basically grifting with a mask. And just because he's doing that, it doesn't change the fact that he's still fascist. What do you think fascists are? They're grifters with masks. The less masks you have, the more mask off you are. In Bad Empanada's case, he has already crashed out and gone mask off. Like, he's acting like, oh, if I was doing this, I would get way more. Well, maybe you're just not a good grifter, but at the end of the day, he's still employing the same devices.
I forgot to do this. Hold up. This nigga sent me an email a couple of years ago asking me to review one of his videos. So he has tried to network with me. I gave him the critique I have had about him the whole time.
Oh, okay. I gotta pause and read this. Bad Empanada, January 8th, 2023. Hey man, I'm doing a video that slightly covers BHI and Kanye stuff, but that's mostly bait to talk about the roots of Afrocentrism. I'm wondering if you would have time to listen to it. Visuals aren't done. So at the moment, it's just audio. Tell me if you think I got anything wrong or stepped too far out of my lane or anything. All good either way. Just would like to get an opinion from a Black American dude I respect, considering this is entirely about Black American history and how some Black people deal with it in the present day. Thanks a lot. FD Signifier. Response, January 10th, 2023. So a few things. You are treading on thin ice and will be opening yourself up to criticism. Fair or unfair, the current climate around Kanye is tiresome, and Black leftists are simply worn out by this discourse. I'd maybe consider not putting this out for another month at minimum. I say this even though I find most of this video to be pretty good. It's still going to feel to many like another white guy talking about us. People all unfairly compare you to Vosh and his lazy racist takes on the issue, which I can tell you're trying to critique. So, on one level this is good. However, it may not matter. It's a lose-lose, which is the blackest thing about the video. That being said, I'd suggest a few things. Okay, so that's fair. And honestly, that's how I approached Bad Empanada in the past. Honestly, it's like I reached out to him several times, specifically when Aaron Bushnell committed suicide, martyred himself, and Bad Empanada had said on his stream, hey, that was when I started noticing things about Bad Empanada, and I reached out to him respectfully and said, excuse me, Mr. Bad Empanada, but I follow your content and I respect what you do in regards to the Palestinians, but what you're saying here almost seems like it completely depreciates what happened in terms of the martyring of Aaron Bushnell. And I would go on to explain that. So I had a moment like that myself around the same time, actually about a year after this, because it was February 2024. So about 13 months. And so yeah, fair play. There was a point in time where FD Signifier and Bad Empanada had a conversation. In my case, we never did because I reached out to Bad Empanada, but Bad Empanada never responded. Here, Bad Empanada actually reached out to FD Signifier. And I think that FD Signifier's commentary seems completely fair.
Time. He sent me his Kanye West, Kyrie Irving, Afrocentrism video, and I straight up said to him, the videos I have some critiques. I would just like to get an opinion from a Black American dude I respect, considering this is entirely about Black American history and how some Black people deal with it in the present day. Thanks a lot, Bad Empanada. And I let him know in that email, I was being nice. I said,
yeah, at that moment in time, I think, based on how he was behaving in public, it would be about another year before he really started to lean into his shitty behaviors that became more and more griftery. Here he was actually approaching you in good faith. This is not good faith, how he's approaching you now, and how he's been acting for a while. He has drunk the Kool-Aid and is acting more and more fascist. And if you start to exhibit like little tendencies, then you can be like, well, but if you're at a point like where F.D. Signifier says, I don't think a white supremacist is a fascist, if you're saying, oh, well, if someone's a liberal, I got news for you. Liberals are just fascists with more masks. It's, what's that expression you like to use, FD? Two wings of the same bird?
Hey, here's my critique of the video. Critiques he did not incorporate it anyway. And I say at the bottom, dudes, you act kind of weird. You should probably act less weird. I like your videos. A lot of people like your videos, but you're a weirdo. It makes it impossible to engage with you publicly.
Yeah, like even earlier, before he started really outing himself as fascist functionally in public, and you have to keep in mind that he was on Twitter and other places and being pretty aggressively conservative insofar as how he would act, and that began to creep more and more into his content. But at least at that moment in time, it seems like he was always weird. And I'm not condoning what he was doing on social media, because that was just showing what he eventually, an ingredient of himself and his behaviors that creeped into his content more broadly. And it was just the root of an underlying issue. So he was always weird in a way that I think just blossomed into something reprehensible.
So this idea that he hasn't tried to network and hasn't tried to engage with people because he's such a principled lone wolf is bullshit. He's been in my comment section for years. For years.
Criticize people on the left, even though I know for a fact.
Yeah, that's well played. Yes, because you got receipts with this, and this nice.
He thinks way less of way many of them than he will ever say. It's because he doesn't want to compromise his audience. Sorry, Noah, you know it's true.
And then out of nowhere, he puts Noah on blast.
Noah Samson does not criticize people on the left, even though I know.
Yeah, this is triangulation. He's an abuser. He's trying to pit Noah against you. He's Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I guess Noah's Samwise Gamgee. Or no, sorry, Noah's Frodo, and you're Samwise Gamgee. So...
for a fact, he thinks way less of way many of them than he will ever say. It's because he doesn't.
Noah didn't appreciate that. Peep Noah's face. So. You can look at Noah's face here. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about me for? Oh, wait till he says it.
Noah Samson does not criticize people on the left. No, for a fact, he thinks way less of way many of them than he will ever say. It's because he does not want to.
You see Noah lock in? He's like, what the fuck you bring up my shit for?
What has though? Okay, so for you, what has brought positive?
Yeah, this is like. Again, triangulation is a standard tactic that abusers use. And Bad Empanada, a bad actor, a fascist, Nazi, what have you. Nazis weren't always openly like mask off to the point where they're like, kill all the Jews. Like they had the Jewish question and various other questions that they were asking. And it led to situations where they found themselves going mask off over time. But the Holocaust, as it happened and coalesced into a larger industrialized movement with a huge bureaucratic function, it took time for that to happen. Fascism is something that grows from a seed into a tree, and now Bad Empanada, through those growing pains, is manipulating people along the way, just like Hitler and company manipulated people along the way. They didn't betray the Strasserites right away. And they didn't betray the ruling class of Weimar right away. It took time. And once they were in positions of power, then they threw other people under the bus. So that's kind of playing out before our very eyes here. Poor Noah. But also, you're straight up telling it like it is to him. And it's like watching someone where you don't want them to spend time with a person that you know isn't good for them, but they're not listening to you. And that sucks.
Change in your eyes from from other.
I think this is where he lost Noah, although it shouldn't have ever gotten to this point to begin with. But at this point, I think he loses Noah because Noah's like, yo, you already in here defending slurs, then you trying to put me in the same category as you.
Like, what can you visibly see as you say you push the needle? How?
Absolutely. You see what's been happening with the first time ever that Hassan Piker is actually facing serious left-wing backlash against his, I'm going to support Zionist electoral strategy. Guess who started that?
To do with you. That has everything to do with Hassan's behavior in the moment. Hassan has been doing a Democrat tour. I get why he's doing it. You know, I hope it works out. His videos about Hassan.
I mean, there's entryism and opportunism, and that is a situation that, like, there are things that we can critique about entryism and taillism and other terms that critique electoralism in politics, bourgeois politics more broadly. So that's not a good thing, you know. And again, but when you're from a position of disadvantage, if you're a person of color in America, black, brown, what have you, indigenous people and various minorities, if you can use a lever of power to cause harm reduction, that's fine. But you also have to keep in mind, what if you pull the lever and it also it reduces harm for some people, or reduces a little bit of harm, but then it has like a delayed effect, or it's causing harm somewhere else. Like, you have to do it in such a way, like, you don't work within the system for like reform. And okay, if you elected Kamala, genocide would be still be happening in Palestine. These things aren't zero sum. If you can find a way to reduce harm for people, okay, that's good. But tokenism is something that butts up against that. And you start making deals, or you work within the system, it can corrupt you. And that's something that you could, you know, that's a criticism I would raise of electoral politics, going all the way back to Lenin. And Lenin is not someone that I agree with 100%, but just the fact that these terms exist, like opportunism, entryism, tailism, these are not new issues. And honestly, the people I heard use those to critique Hassan Piker, I agree with the critiques from that person, socialism for all, but I also have critiques of them because they're problematic in their own ways, transphobic, whorephobic, what have you. And I've written about that largely, you know, through their endorsement of Stalin as a political figure, someone who made queer people illegal in the Soviet Union. So, yeah, like, you have to be able to see past, oh, yeah, I respect Hassan Piker. He's cozying up to the Democratic Party. Like, I could see why he's doing it. Well, yeah, I could too, but you're entering white liberal territory at that point. And if you want to treat him like Mon Martha from Andor, it's like, okay, but you're in dangerous waters at that point. And there's already enough to critique about Hassan Piker.
26,000 views, 25,000 views, 30,000 views, 28,000 views. He is not affecting the landscape with these videos. He's just not. He literally got more views talking about me talking about a Disney movie. So no.
That's a fair point.
I think it probably has more to do with Hassan being the most visible leftist figure in modern media, that he's been targeted from a variety of different places, including the left.
I will say, like, outside of YouTube, like in my case, I don't get a lot of traffic on YouTube, being a trans, radical, sex worker. And a lot of my work is on my website, on my blog, on social media. And yeah, I get a certain amount of traffic. I am never going to be in the millions of views because I'm a white, trans, academic sex worker who is punching up in some pretty like radical inclusive ways, which is always going to be punched down against by a wide variety of people, not just liberals, but also so-called progressives. I investigate a lot of different people. And so, you know, views aren't everything, but I understand what FD is saying, because Bad Empanada is like, oh, I'm so influential, I did all of this. He's taking credit for things that he doesn't really, he's punching above his weight, basically. So I definitely agree with FD there.
I think it's due to Hassan's genuine flaws and limitations that he's always been criticized from the left as a bot.
What change of view contributed, true though? None of us have contributed to
Yeah, no, Hassan dug his own grave as far as that goes. Just insofar as he's received criticism, it's because of his own behaviors, and it's not really. Bad Empanada is always orbiting Hassan, and they talked like once. And, you know, I agree with some of the criticisms that Bad Empanada said about Hassan, namely, hey, if you're going to have Bernie Sanders, a Zionist, on your channel, you should probably call them out on things and, pull the pin on that grenade. If you're going to use it then. It's like, yeah, to some degree, I understand what Bad Empanada is saying there, but you're also going to shut the door forever. So there's some give and take there, and I understand what Bad Empanada is saying, but then Bad Empanada is trying to take credit for it. It's like, yeah, no, Hassan is responsible for what happened to Hassan, because Hassan's the one with the giant channel. Bad Empanada is this weirdo he's not just punching above his weight, he's taking credit for things that he doesn't really have any right to do. And FD Signifier is right about that. It's like, you're not really putting in the numbers for that. And on YouTube, numbers do count insofar as relationships between people, beef, content on content, drama. It's like there are certain times where numbers do matter. And this is one of them, I think.
And you notice he's filibustering. He is gish galloping.
Yeah, it's a conservative tactic.
He's trying to talk fast. And you see my face here. At this point, I think it's about time. I'm like, he's about ready. I want you to hear the next thing he says to defend himself.
Okay. Let's see what happens here. I'm curious.
You think that the US government is occupied by Zionists. Now, is that not true? Yeah, but do I think that right now it's really important for us to harp on why that's not?
So he says, most people in the US believe in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It's okay for me to say Nazi dog whistles and hate speech because most people in the US believe in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. To a black man, thank you, Maxim Veer. It's important for me to call a black man a Zog slave. And he keeps coming back to Goy because that makes it a little less obviously awful, but he's still employing genuine anti-Semitism to defend himself here. Do you understand though?
This is a Vosh N-word defense.
Right. This is Boston Destiny, which by the way he did. I don't even want to get into the fact that you defended.
Okay, so
yeah, like Noah's like, this is Vosh, this is Destiny. So this is backfiring on Bad Empanada. But here's the thing. He's still being platformed in ways where it's like, I would be more aggressive. You're giving him rope to hang himself with, hoisting himself on his own petard. But at the end of the day, he's still a Nazi, Do I expect Noah Sampson to be able to say that? Or even FD Signifier at this point? No, not really. But this is interesting to watch, for sure.
Let's talk about...
Oh, I forgot about that. He defended... Hold up. I forgot that he also said there's nothing wrong with saying Uncle Tom.
That's the problem with you guys. You understand everything through the vein of identity politics and like individuals more than anything. So you can't like reconcile this fact that, for one, calling someone a fucking Uncle Tom is totally fine. Totally fine. I don't give a shit what Americans say. We're reclaiming this word for everyone. The only issue is that Uncle Tom was a slave, okay? So sometimes it can be used in the wrong way. Like calling someone a house slave when they're doing something clearly by choice, it just doesn't really apply, but it's not particularly offensive, okay? The connotation of this is that these people are like collaborators of some sort, with people who ultimately see them as lesser. This is something that can be applied to many situations.
So he then proceeds to explain Uncle Tom to the black people. This is about Van Jones and something else.
Uncle Tom is a universally useful term in the connotations of like a collaborator who's collaborating against the interests of a group of people for some reason. And Van Jones is absolutely one of those people. Van Jones is one of those people. Other people who are like that as well, like Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib is an Uncle Tom Palestinian. Now, I do understand that Uncle Tom was actually a slave, as in he didn't really have much of a choice. But also, like, the couple...
Did he even mention that Uncle Tom came from a book? Does he know this? I think he's talking about him like he's a real person. I won't nitpick.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just literary criticism, though. When you talk about characters in a book like they're people, it's like, here's Macbeth in the Scottish play doing something. Like, that's just something that literary critics can do. Like, that's not so unusual.
But I almost forgot that.
Saying dog slave to someone, or goy slave or whatever, or good goy or whatever.
He keeps on putting goy in there, which has never been... Just show it one more time. He keeps putting going there because he's trying to sane wash what he did.
Yeah. He's using that as a mask and trying to hide from the fact that he's using, like FD Signifier has pointed out, Nazi dog whistles, basically. Things that the average viewer isn't going to know the history behind Zog, for instance. I didn't know the acronym. I wasn't familiar with it.
Zog. These aren't things that are like used against you, like you're a Zog, you're a goy. If anything, they call people goys.
And that's just not true, because he's saying they, He's saying they to imply it's the Jews to dissuade from the fact that he's talking about the Nazis. Topic in hand, the they here in hand are Nazis.
Goy, slave, whatever.
Oh,
this shit is. Why would I call him an N-word? He's not doing anything.
why not? It's also funny.
Why
Call me in your videos, Bad Empanada. They're funny. They'll get.
So say it. Say what? Say the word you want to say. Say it. Say it right now. I will say it with you. I'll say it.
All right, I think we can move on.
Peep what he just did.
They're funny. They'll get.
I didn't notice this till after the fact. Look at his face when I say, call me a. And now I got him. Get you views.
I'm not arguing that it's funny.
But you think I'm not arguing that it's funny. I didn't peep that either. I'm not arguing that it's funny.
Like using this fucking humorous term.
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah. Make him try and defend something that's indefensible. Use a part of yourself and basically take his argument and just swap out the slur. Yeah, no, that's well played.
Dog slave.
Twitter.
Absolutely, that term is fucking hilarious. Why shouldn't I?
Twitter.
Absolutely, that term is fucking hilarious. Why shouldn't I?
Absolutely, that term is fucking hilarious. Why shouldn't I?
I didn't look at Noah's face. What's Noah doing here? Let me see. Oh, me in your videos, Bad Empanada. They're funny. They'll get you views.
I'm not arguing that.
Let's talk for a second. Let's talk for a second. Here we go. You think I'm a liberal Zionist. You think.
Poor Noah. Like I don't want to infantilize Noah. You know, it's like, again, if Noah, like on one hand, he always kind of gave me himbo vibes, but at the same time, he's done some really excellent journalism in regards to the Palestinian genocide. Like, I don't think he's stupid, but here's the thing: even if someone is relatively smart, and you know, him being dumb is just kind of like an act, or you know, it's a persona, that kind of thing, you can still get misled. You know, there are plenty of academics who get misled all the time. We're still human. And activists can get misled and stuff like that. And it's just watching him sweat, literally, while this is going on. And it's just, like, I definitely have points of criticism in regards to F.D. Signifier. But he is, you know, when he gets down to brass tacks, even though I think it would be better suited for him to just be like, look, a Nazi's a Nazi. Because Nazi isn't just the historical figure from Nazi Germany. Christo-fascism is a thing. Okay, say fash. It's interchangeable with Nazi. And there is, to some degree, an intuitive quality. You know, I could point out all of these things and be like, look, when we get to this point, well, yeah, but we're 40 minutes into, you know, an hour-long video before you get to this point. You're burying the lead, at the very least. And as far as that goes, I'm like, no, you should really lead off. If brevity is the soul of wit, you have to get to the bottom of things. And if you want to hang him with his own rope after that, that's fine. But it is satisfying watching him get the better of Bad Empanada in this debate. No, well played. Credit where credit is due.
That it's more important to be funny and identify the flaws in your enemies unprincipled.
No, that's not what.
Call me a with the hard ER. You defend it. Norm
Can you let me
Finkelstein's
respond?
use.
Like, I don't understand how you think this is like some sort of good response to what I'm saying.
I think
Because
you don't
the term
understand.
goy slave is no, it's not. It doesn't make any sense what you're saying because the term goy slave is of direct relation to what I'm talking about.
He's not. We're not talking about goy slave. My point
Jewish
is you're
supremacy,
defending your
Jewish
use of
exceptionalism.
slurs because they're funny, because they're hilarious, and because you get the right to do that.
No, that wasn't the
Because
point
you
of what
think
I
the
was saying.
person-
It's not a slur.
You,
How is
you
that a
repeated
slur?
it's hilarious. I'm sorry.
Okay, question. Who is the term goy slave a slur again?
I'm sorry. I don't know enough to say that goy slave is a slur to any particular person, but I do know it's a Nazi term, popularized from
It's
the
just
term.
a Nazi term.
that you-
Zionist is also a
It's
Nazi.
just a Nazi term. That's kind of a thing. But the whole point is, regardless of whether or not the term is a slur, pay attention to his face now. You know, in the moment, he know he's that it was highly offensive to say that to anyone.
To who?
Let alone,
To who? To who is it offensive and why?
To anyone, let alone a black man who is
How
not
does
Jewish.
being black
and
change
not-
anything?
How does saying calling a black man a slave change?
A goy slave, whatever.
First off, Zog slave. This term's all again from the Turner Diaries. The Nazi.
I mean, Zog is like even
your
less
defense.
of a
Your defense has
lesser
been
racial slur. Like calling someone Zionist occupied government. That doesn't even make
Your
sense.
defense has been, who cares? That's hilarious. By that
That wasn't my
rationale,
defense. My defense was prefaced with something about how right now it's important that we challenge these sorts of idiotic
why
frameworks
can't you
of
challenge
like
those
Jewish supremacy,
frameworks
Jewish
without
exceptionalism.
using clearly offensive, fundamentally unprincipled, and distracting language?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfectly valid thing to point out. Yeah, you're not going to... There's the term fight fire with fire. Nelson Mandela said it. But you're using, like, it's not like a one-to-one kind of thing. Nelson Mandela and company to challenge apartheid used a very particular kind of violence, and they're not using the same violence that the state did, like identically, you know. And if you're challenging the KKK, you don't just go around using the same exact language the same exact way they do. Instead, you use it differently than them, and you reclaim the N-word, for instance, but you don't go around calling black people the N-word or Uncle Tom, for instance. And you have to be able to discuss tokenism, for instance, without being racist towards them. You're challenging racism. You're not contributing to it. That's the idea. So yeah, no, I agree with FD Signifier 100%. Fucking oath. Slurs aren't activism. Period.
Because if
yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's it. It's over. There's nothing left to discuss.
the turn up is happening now, you think that allows you to do that
all the fucking time?
Then call me the N-word right now on camera. If you do it all the time, if you don't think there's a difference, if you
Who
don't
said I
think
use
it
the
matters.
N-word all the time?
No.
You got him. Yeah. No. Well done. This is good.
Still trying to get Scallop and talk over me.
Supposedly marginalized Jewish community.
Bad Empanada, you could have said in this tweet, BGR is defending Jewish supremacy by such and such and such. You could have done that. That wouldn't have went off in the fucking algorithm. So instead you made a hilarious... It's kind of just repeating a thesis I presented this whole time. He knows what will get him attention. He knows it's wrong to do. He's made his own video about it, but he needed my attention. You needed my attention because I know you're going to react to this. It's provocative. It gets the people going. It's funny to you. You could have avoided that language and you chose not to because you're unprincipled, because you care more about the attention.
Have you ever called anyone a dumbass? Have you ever called anyone an idiot? Have you ever used it?
That's a false equivalency. That they're not the same thing. Like calling someone a dumbass and calling someone a slur, like calling me faggot, for instance, is not the same thing as calling me a dumbass or calling me a rapist, for instance. Like the language is loaded and used in a very specific way. If you call someone a dumbass, what are you, Red Foreman from that 70s show? Like it's a very, that's just a broad, you're just a general put down. It's not a slur to call someone a dumbass. Generally, if you're using it under like a racist context, then that's one thing.
Yes, those words are not intrinsically tied to Nazis or slavery.
Zog slave isn't intrinsically tied to Nazism either. It came like 40 years. Zog slave, I don't even think they ever...
It came 30, 40 years ago. What happened 30, 40 years ago? Bad Empanada? Was the Turner Diaries written? I'm sorry, I don't have to use racially charged Nazi dog whistles in between that, and neither do you. You don't have to do that, but nobody will pay attention to you unless you act in that way. And you care more about attention than the politics you say that you're so principled on.
Yeah, that's a completely valid thing to say. He compromised any goodwill that he would have to make that bank. And he's someone who's, you know, I get on FD Signifier about counting beans, that kind of thing. Sometimes I feel like, you know, got to know what your priorities are as an activist. But at the same time, money is something that talks in America. So, like, I can critique FD Signifier, but I know why money is important in that conversation. So it's like I can kind of get that. Whereas Bad Empanada is a white Australian straight guy living in Argentina who is concerned with money in a way that feels a lot more like grifty. And I've seen him brag about it in a much more open, distasteful kind of way. So it's like, again, any criticism I have of FD Signifier is generally quite mild. And the strongest criticism that I would probably have is just like, call him a Nazi, because he is one. You could still get him and hang him with his own rope, hoist him on his own petard, but, you know, recognize that fascism is something that grows into itself. So that would be like my biggest critique of FD Signifier. You know, it's like, you're not really blowing the whistle here. You're basically using him to make yourself look good. And you're doing it in ways that are, you know, you're making good arguments against him, absolutely. I don't really disagree with anything that you're saying to Bad Empanada. At least off the top of my head, I didn't notice anything. But still, at the end of the day, your ability to... You're having this conversation with him years afterward with your back against the wall. Like, And if this is your ability to challenge someone like him, like, I don't know. And, you know, Bad Empanada is kind of a nobody, but he is also someone that reflects certain tendencies within leftist movements. Noah and the Tabernacle and other people who kind of keep quiet when they really shouldn't, but also FD Signifier keeps quiet too, to a certain extent. And now that there's a dust up, I'm rooting for FD Signifier. Yeah, absolutely. I just wish it had happened sooner and that they were like, you're a Nazi, Bad Empanada, and also, you know, Zog is a Nazi language. If you use Nazi language unironically, guess what? You're a Nazi. How hard is that to do, you know? I'm still rooting for FD Signifier in this situation. Out of these three people, I feel like they're walking away from this looking the best, the most principled, if you will. And that's important.
Do you see, do you see how it...
He doesn't ever respond to this critique. He doesn't ever respond to this critique. He could easily avoid acting like he acts, but he would get less views. He would not appeal to the weirdo audience he has, if not for the fact that he acts like this publicly, consistently. Not on YouTube usually, but on Twitter regularly.
It can cause people that might otherwise be sympathetic to your arguments, like FD, who said he agreed with the first part.
I genuinely don't care. I think this isn't really important compared to his defense of Jewish supremacy, his idea that doesn't even exist. I think he's using this as a deflection from the main point of why I was responding to him in the first
I don't think he believes that it doesn't exist. I don't think he said he does.
He does. Yes, I responded to him on this. He was
and he cannot and has not presented any evidence that I do not believe Jewish supremacy is real. I've already clarified that, but go ahead.
Defending Nuance take, which was that Jewish supremacy practically doesn't exist.
Is that something you think, FD?
No.
So there can...
If not just for the fact that this conversation could have been about more material issues.
It can be. I've been trying to push them to that, but you're talking about how...
Under the context, you've been trying to push them to that under the context of defending your use of the...
Your use of...
Zog.
Yeah, like... And that's the bottom line.
What's wrong with using the word Zog? Explain. You have not explained. You just said it's insult.
Oh, yeah. No, this is... Oh, yeah. No, this is bad. Because again, you know, the comparison to Bad Empanada to Vosh or Destiny, this is where it really, you know, because at this point you're forcing him to say things that really make the mask slip. You know, even though, you know, because I'd be like, look, you're a Nazi. Here, I can prove it. Do you really have to have this conversation? But to get him to basically force him to basically take the mask off and ask the question, what's wrong with using the word Zog? And then FD Signifier's reaction is like, oh my God, you know, absolutely. That's how I would react to. Well, actually, I would respond like that, but then, well, and again, I would have conducted the start of this conversation very differently. I would not have had the patience to set up this kind of elaborate trap. As soon as I found out about Bad Empanada being the way that he was, Bad Empanada would never debate me. I would never debate him because he's, you know, I don't have time for this kind of thing. But now that I'm watching it play out, it's like, yeah, it's a trap is a trap. And FD Signifier reverse Uno card, basically.
It's offensive to who? Oh my God, your hair is worse than mine. I'm so sorry, man.
Well, I mean, you...
Then he tries to clown my hair.
Well, what does that mean? You know, it's like walking up to a black guy and saying your hair's bad. Like, that sounds kind of racist, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. And also, it's not a good defense, right? It's like, oh, what's wrong with doing this? By the way, your hair sucks. Like,
now I'm gonna chalk this up to being a white Anglo in Europe.
He's Australian, but he's moving like a European throughout this entire conversation. So I get how you made the mistake.
Because a lot of white people don't know much about black people. They don't know much about black hair. But you see my smile here. These are braided locks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like, you know, I've drawn a lot of people of color, so I learned about braided hair. I learned about baby hair and different styling kind of things that I just wasn't as familiar with because a lot of white people don't have really, really curly hair. Some do, you know, it depends. But oftentimes not like that, you know, and it's just something that I learned from spending time with black people and other people with curly hair like that. That's not bad hair. It's literally their hair, you know. Bad Empanada may as well have said nappy-headed.
See if I can get him on camera. Dreadlocks. There's a whole history there. Mine are called fashion locks because they're grown a specific way. And with fashion locks, it's a very specific design. In each line here is a little square in the middle, and each of those squares is hair. It's plaited hair rolled into a specific spot. And in 3 weeks, it'll be, in a month, there'll be a little afro under here. That aside from having a generally jacked up hairline, we already know that the hairline is bad. The hairline's bad, it's not receding. And this is why I turn it, because when he does that, I'm like, okay, I'm done. You know, let's style on him a little bit more. So I want you to peep how my energy changes after this point.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you've already won the match, so now you can just enjoy yourself a little bit.
I'm gonna continue to not respond to your bad faith nonsense.
So you can't just say what I'm saying is bad faith.
I like this. You're laying down a boundary. I'm not going to respond to your bad faith nonsense. I got what I wanted out of this conversation. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
What do about it?
Because
George,
I
you gonna make a video?
directly. I directly responded
make
to
the
your
Signifier
arguments.
content and call me the N-word in it. You get your,
This is just your excuse to avoid responding to me. Look, here's what you said, right?
No.
Here's what you said in my comments.
I respond on my platform, on my terms.
So you have me right here. I
don't give a shit about you, though.
Because
yeah, no, fucking oath. Like, I'll respond to you how I want. And this is, you put down your boundary. You're like, I'm going to handle this how I want to. And even though I don't always entirely, I would do it my own way. FD Signifier would do it their own way. I would have to say, yeah, FD Signifier didn't agree to be a part of this. At first I thought, why is this going on? Why are they having this conversation? And honestly, like when I was talking with, yeah, it's not a good look. Well, I mean, frankly, it wasn't. But when I learned more about it, I realized that, yeah, fair play. He found himself in a situation that he didn't want to be in, even though I would argue that sooner or later, it was bound to happen. And if Bad Empanada and Noah Sampson are talking with each other, and it's just, I've already explained, how I felt about like that. And honestly, I think when you're critiquing the left and being a critic and holding people accountable, you can get out in front of this kind of thing. And to some extent, FD Signifier had kind of walked away from that. And that's just sort of a consequence of that. But watching him handle himself against Bad Empanada, he did a really good job, because this is all unscripted. And, and his arguments and what he's doing, he handled himself well. And I agree with a lot of what he said. Leading the stuff that led up to this, and is he going to blow the whistle? Is he going to not? Well, the reality is that I think having a big channel is important in blowing the whistle, but you also have to pick your battles. He has a lot of other stuff going on, and I have criticized him about some things where I don't think you can really talk your way out of it. Like, oh, your coworker's a liberal Zionist, Abigail Thorne. It's like, so my biggest point of criticism with FD Signifier, I've made that known. Whereas this kind of thing, it's more, call him a Nazi or hang him with his own rope the way the FD Signifier did. Potato. The result is similar, I think, because after this, he's going to fuck off and be like, whatever, I don't want to have anything to do with you ever again. Okay. That's fair. I would be a little bit more stabby myself, but that's just my style. And at that point, one person, it's styles make fights. I would not be very much fun to watch. This is definitely more entertaining. I'll hand FD Signifier that. And I also agree with a lot of their arguments when push comes to shove.
You said that there are secret anti-Semitism, dog whistles, and
I'm going to bring you in here because deep down I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure this motherfucker's a paper tiger. I'm pretty sure that if he stands in front of somebody...
Yeah, you're pretty sure that if you avoid actually talking about the issues, I'm here to talk about the fucking issues. I'm not here to insult you. I'm here to insult your content. Even though I might do it as an aside, I'm here to talk about the actual issues. But you're making it about like my motivations, about like, like tone policing shit.
This is just generic tone policing.
Hey, just making a last minute tweak from the editing bay after hearing this part back and realizing, I'm a better debater than I let on, but I'm still not perfect, because I can't believe I let him get away with this. So here he is calling my desire for him not to use Nazi hate speech tone policing.
Oh, Nazis be like that. They find ways to, because you're basically taking a victory lap, right? And you're like, I won. And he's still fighting you. He's still dangerous. You're cornered. He's cornered. You're in the same room together. That's when my friend Rickspin, Clockwork Rickspin, said, when you lie down with pigs, roll down in the mud, there's going to be some stink there. And part of that is just the fact that, if you're scoring this based on, does he get away with things? Is he able to sort of worm things in and get past your defenses? Because it's ultimately not just about you, but people who are watching. That is going to happen. There are going to be casualties in terms of, is something going to get past you? So no, this is something that you need to keep in mind. And and I feel like FD Signifiers is being very transparent about all of this. And I have criticisms and things like this, but yeah, you're just pointing out, like, again, Bad Empanada is a paper tiger. Bad Empanada is this, but he's also still kind of he's juggling different things at the same time.
And I've seen this from him and his fans as I've monitored things the last few days. They keep saying, why are you tone policing me when a genocide is happening? And the problem is that too many of us don't stop and say, not to you. The genocide is not happening to Bad Empanada.
Correct. Absolutely. And that ties into the usage of slurs too. It's like you're using a slur, but you can't reclaim it because you're not the normal recipient of it. So those two things go hand in hand.
He is not under oppression to the point where we should excuse him when he can't behave to a basic level of civility. The concept of tone policing, which comes from the idpol world that these guys tend to hate so much, is meant to empower and center the individuals who are being harmed and oppressed.
Yes, absolutely. And that includes the N-word for people of color, black people, or people who are Arabs could be called sand N-words, for instance, during the War on Terror. So bigots will use and appropriate language that normally gets used against one group for another. But aside from that, the reclaiming of language is something that you do if you're oppressed. The thing about Bad Empanada is that he's not oppressed, but I think to some level he probably sees himself as oppressed, because it's the most effective con man is the one who believes his own lies. Again, he's high on his own supply, and I would argue again this is a fascist thing or a liberal thing, however, a tanky thing. It's just, but at the end of the day, it corrupts you, and he is corrupted. And just because he's Heinrich Himmler isn't the Superman he argued himself to be any more than Reinhard Heydrich was the man with the iron heart. It doesn't change the fact that he, when scratched, still bleeds fascist blood. And he doesn't, that lack of understanding about, oh, I'm oppressed, actually, I'm being tone policed, or you're tone policing me during a genocide, and the genocide's not happening to you. FD Signifier is 100% correct about that. And I completely understand why they went back and edited this into what is basically it's edited a little bit, but it's a relatively lax video compared to something like a more serious long essay. Editing is editing its work, but he actually went in and edited this one part in an otherwise uninterrupted video, apart from like the jump cuts and stuff like that. But it's relatively linear. He's going back and mentioning this, and that's good. It's an important thing to mention, absolutely.
It's giving grace for people who are being victimized to not be forced to perfectly and gently explain their victimization in a way that won't upset their oppressors or uncenter the feelings of others. For instance, when victims of Israel's violence are asked why they said something a certain way, why they're not being considerate of the Israeli soldiers who died killing their families.
There's some comments you've made in the past about the Israeli hostages have been very controversial, where you have said that most of the hostages held by Hamas are not actually hostages. I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to clarify about those comments?
First of all, I did not question her status as a hostage, because she's a hostage, but because what other Palestinians who were kidnapped. I mean, I don't want to name people, but I have people in my family who were kidnapped from checkpoints, from schools, from shelters, and they are named prisoners. So my question was, why should Emily and other hostages be named hostages while my loved ones should be named prisoners? I was kept hostage for 53 hours. I was blindfolded and handcuffed and was beaten in my face and asked for the Israeli soldiers to see a doctor, and they denied me any medical treatment. So no one is talking about this. Why? They are not acknowledging my suffering. So I questioned, why are they given this privilege of being called a hostage while I am called in all the social, in all news platforms, I was detained.
Tone policing is supposed to protect oppressed people and to extent their allies from false smears of anti-Semitism or reverse.
Yeah, tone policing is something that's used against trans people who are trying to talk about their oppression in ways where you can't kill home rule with kindness, and you have to instead approach it in a way that is scrappy, because that's how it takes struggle. It takes a fight. Frederick Douglass, there must be struggle. And if you start telling people, oh, be polite, you're removing the struggle. You're removing the teeth from the fight, the ability to be violent, in ways that are useful to activism. Like it's incrementalism, it's tone policing, it's Obama, it's various other forms of tokenization, often just take the teeth out of the fight. Tone policing is a way of doing that.
Racism or, don't say cis, or all the other made up ways that the general true opposition uses to diminish the critique that they're getting. When American college students speak up and say Israel is committing a genocide at their colleges, and the colleges try to expel them saying that that's hate speech, that's tone policing that maybe extends away from the centered victims. But tone policing was never meant to be used as a cudgel for alleged allies to use against each other to evade valid criticism over their behavior.
Yeah, no, it's a tool of the oppressor. It's not tone policing and saying, oh, I'm being tone policed right now. And you're not actually being tone policed. You're just avoiding criticism. It's a divide and conquer strategy if you use it like that. Like, tone policing is something you use to describe people who are actually oppressors. But if you say amongst oppressed groups that they're the oppressors, you're doing what colonizers do.
Bad Empanada can't cry tone policing because he's not being genocided. This behavior from him isn't a product of the duress of being under oppression. It's a habit that he's had since the beginning of his career for drawing attention to himself. He's not worried about the plight of Palestinians here. He's desiring to politicize his edgelord behavior and protect it from critique. It is perfectly...
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
reasonable to expect him to watch his tone. And it's the most white leftist thing ever for a Greek man from Australia who becomes a leftist passport bro and moves to Argentina where he can spread those USD super far. It's the most white leftist thing ever for him to legitimately deploy Nazi terminology against black people and then cry that he's being victimized for being told to watch his tone. And it's almost always white male leftists who pull this shit, who are...
Yeah, none of this is wrong.
Argue that they should get to act with impunity as long as they have good politics.
As I say, impunity is the apex of privilege. Boundaries for me, not for thee.
It's the classic trope of white leftists adopting leftist air quotes identity with the ulterior motive of using it to distance themselves from whiteness instead of becoming a leftist to unpack and diffuse their whiteness. They want...
Yeah, you're anti-racist if you actually critique an aspect of yourself where you belong to the colonizer group, class, culture, race. And if you defend yourself, like with a siege mentality, you're doubling down in ways that only contribute to colonizing behaviors in some shape or form, which Bad Empanada is guilty of basically from the start.
Being a leftist to grant them oppressed status so they can center themselves in other people's struggles and cosplay as oppressed.
Yes. Yeah, I can see your educator roots. You've told me that you have taught people for a long time, and you're really good, FD, at taking some fairly difficult to parse, like things that get messy or dust up kind of stuff, and you can describe it afterwards in a way that's very easy to understand, and you break it down in ways where I'm just like, oh yeah, no, this is good. This is my favorite part of the video. It's a shame it's at the end. You should have like put this at the start, but it has spoiled the surprise, I know. But again, I feel like this is like one of the times where I might write an essay, and I'll write the first draft, and then I'll get to the bottom and I'll have this real zinger. And I'm like, you should really put that at the start. Make that your thesis argument, you know? But that's just me being an academic. But yeah, no, this is great. This is good stuff.
That's what this is. Bad Empanada cosplaying as a victim of oppression and demanding that he gets to act like a Nazi because there's a genocide going on somewhere else.
I would make a slight correction. He's not acting like a Nazi. He is, because ipso facto, by virtue of action. If you're acting like a Nazi, ipso facto, you are. And that's just all there is to it. And I say this as someone who's been on the receiving end of his abuse. And other people I know have been on the receiving end of his abuse. And that's something I would, you need to stress, you need to have a clear thesis argument. You have this wonderful thing at the end, and then tweak it a little bit. He's not acting like a Nazi. He is a Nazi.
But Bad Empanada is not getting bombed. He's not being displaced. He's in Argentina, his passport bro haven, living well off making slop content. So he should have it well enough in himself to not have to call a black man a slave to make a point. There's no emotional labor that he's undertaking to excuse him from that basic decency.
But if you want to make it about that, why didn't I read off the comment that you left on my video, where you basically said that you were in it to like form parasocial relationships with your
You're like, please do.
audience, and that, according to you, I'm not as good at that.
Did I basically say that? What is this?
Yeah, I'll read off.
So I'm styling on him at this point.
Yeah. This is like, the fight between Goku and Frieza, where Goku's just like, I'm going to slap some sense in you, and he's just completely schooling him. Your power level is decreasing with every blow. In fact, you're not even a challenge to me anymore. It's kayfabe, right?
At this point, I'm in bully mode. We're not having an intellectual conversation at all. I just recognize that there's someone weaker in front of me, and I'm being kind of mean. I want you
Yes, good. Took you long enough.
to peep him lie through his teeth right now, and again refuse to acknowledge that he's lying, and then expect me to engage with him in good faith.
What do you think of the videos that you're talking about you at Drama Slum? Because I was responding to your
So
argument.
first off, the first thing I pointed out was that you clipped an out of context conversation. That's the short that has 71,000 views. That's like the most viewed short you posted.
Well, yeah, you said Zionist is a Nazi dog.
Did I?
I mean, I posted
No, he
that
didn't.
short.
He didn't.
Let's roll this.
He didn't.
I didn't
He
say
did.
didn't say
In that
that.
clip, that's
I
what he
didn't
said.
No, we
No,
watched
I
the clip.
didn't say
In
that.
that clip, that's
You're
what he said.
literally
He didn't say
lying through the teeth. We watched that. So it's like, so here I'm like confused. Like, wait, so you don't even know? We've already seen the clip. It's at the beginning of this video. I never say that. He refuses to move though. Live just now.
We watched it.
You labeled it as such.
You didn't say that.
applied as such, but I did not say that.
Man, what did you say in that clip?
No.
What did you
How
say in that clip?
about Bad Empanada? How about say, oops, my bad? And it's like he still refuses to acknowledge that he's wrong, that he's misrepresented me. So at this point, I'm done on my wife.
Right? Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, he's a bad actor.
I've been here for never play
2.5
defense. If you cannot just objectively own up to the fact that you clipped something out of context and labeled it with quotes that I
So
said.
is that short the only thing you have a problem with? Because that short is from after.
See, still doesn't want to engage.
Posted that comment and started complaining about me.
You're changing the subject now.
That short is
This just sounds like you're looking for a roundabout way to get around actually responding to my substantive criticisms of you. Because I made a 30-minute long video responding to you and others. It wasn't just.
And we went over that 30-minute long video in here where he barely talks about me and clips me out of context again. He understands what he's doing. He understands that playing into edgy boy nonsense is fundamentally wrong. But it's okay because he clarifies it later. So we shouldn't care. I shouldn't critique him doing the thing that he also himself critiqued. Mind you, I don't think that guy probably even used the word dogslay, but you center yourself in your desire to be an edgy boy and make really funny jokes and refuse to acknowledge the standards, refusing to acknowledge just caring about your comrades, the people in the space with you, the greater audience watching, and the history of what it means to be called a slave as a black man, the history of where the term all comes from. You could easily just came on stream and said, you know what? Probably shouldn't have said that. Real talk. That was probably a distraction.
Right?
And then we could have been on to things that are way more meaningful.
Right?
But you've dug your heels in for your right to use offensive language. You are Vosh. You are the new Vosh. It's so fucking funny how
Your
full
politics
circle
is
this
the same.
Oh, God, no, this is great. Thank you. Thank you for making this. This is lovely.
You are Vosh, but your tactics are the same as Vosh. That's even more pathetic. He keeps skipping the Nazi part. He does not want to talk about the fact that he came from Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Offended me to see you say to a black man.
Offends you, just as I would.
I know, and that's kind of my point. You care more about being an edgy boy. You are Vosh.
Your argument here is I'm offended. I'm offended. Okay.
No, I think the argument goes deeper into the actual practical utility of the way you act online, where more people would take you seriously if you didn't troll. And you joke around, right? But you troll. You know that, right?
I think what's much more important.
More important isn't different than also important.
What's much more important is the
Right? Oh man, Noah fighting back a little bit.
And it's like he refuses to move off this. Refuses. He has the right to act like a troll weirdo because there's a genocide in Palestine. If I know your standard is to purposefully...
this is the thing. You're just insisting.
The question that I want you to ask is, why would I meaningfully respond to you when I know you're going to willfully misrepresent what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Lie about it and then not apologize, and that this is a history of behavior for you. Why would I do that? Who the fuck do you think you are?
Simple question here. What did I say in my actual videos to you?
And so at this point, when he's avoided taking any accountability for his language, and now he's avoiding taking accountability for his behavior, I'm done. But I pray, I'm asking pretty please, do not go over to his channels to argue with him about this.
Oh God, no. I've had spent so much time researching him, writing about it. Like, I've done enough of that. and honestly, I blocked him because he was accusing me of stalking him and being a sex pest, and he was attacking me. So I don't want to go anywhere near the guy. I've already written, multiple chapters about him and have an extended dossier on the guy. It's like, I might put a little footnote just because this actually wound up being pretty entertaining. It took you a minute to get to the good stuff because you hit it all at the end. I appreciated everything that you were saying in the video. And despite the fact that I've critiqued you in the past, my criticisms of you are ultimately quite minor compared to this fucking dumpster fire of a human being. I have no intention of doing that. I'm going to release this. I'll tag you. I'll tag Noah Sampson and just basically say, thank you for this. It's still kind of a mess, but there is a lot to glean from it that hangs Bad Empanada with his own rope, hoists him on his own petard. And that is, there's value in that, even if sometimes I wish it could have happened sooner, and just because he's such a giant piece of shit. But there is something to be said about letting someone dig their own grave. And that is definitely what happened here. Like this, on one hand, he's appealing to people who aren't going to agree with you because they're bad actors as well. They're racist like he is. They're fascist, right? And there is something to be said about that, but it's not a zero-sum game. And there is, just given the larger context here about how you found yourself in a situation where you're like, okay, I really didn't want to have this conversation, but now that I'm here, I have some time. And yeah, it took you a moment to get there, but you, in kayfabe terms, it makes you think of Triple H, the cerebral assassin. Not my favorite approach. I'm much more meat-axy. It comes from my upbringing and training in academia, where I tend to go straight for the jugular. I don't have time for this kind of stuff. It's just not my thing. But, different strokes for different folks, and yeah, you fucking knocked him out.
Or argue with his fans. Argue with him on Reddit, argue with him on Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever, all the other places. But do not argue with them in my comments or in his comments. Well, I don't know. I guess if you want to argue in my comments, that's fine. But don't,
right, because it's going to boost your stuff.
Don't go to his comments.
Well, yeah, because he wants that. It's engagement.
Because all that's going to do is create more connectivity between his community and mine. Please come from here.
Well, I'm sorry. At this point, it's kind of the cat's kind of out of the bag, right?
Despite the L's Noah's gonna have to take around this, my criticism of him, Noah's still the homie. Please go and donate to his legal defense fund. This lawsuit is low-key like a Drake lawsuit because he's suing Noah for critiquing him in a video essay.
We also have to keep in mind one last thing is that any extra money goes towards helping Palestinians. You know, so it's not just about getting sued by Ethan Klein. It's also like it is a fundraiser for the rights of Palestinians.
Which is really dangerous. That sets a dangerous precedent. Go show him some love. He's probably only been streaming for a little bit. And donate some money if you can. All right, y'all. That's it. Peace. I'm out.